So this is Lloyd, the son of the Baron Arcos Frontera, the lord that oversees the county of Frontera. The soul inside this person is actually someone else, from Korea in the era of the future. He went to another world where the protagonist is someone else, called Javier Esrahan. As of now, his mission with Javier are to repay his family's debt caused by his father got scammed by his own knight. Armed with his knowledge from the 21st century as civil engineer, he exploits his knight, Javier the future sword master, to do all kind of works, such as digging channel for a house he was contracted to build and for most importantly to cut a massive caterpillar turd into uniform length. On the empty green land, both of them and 4 familiar summons looking to see the plan that Lloyd is going to have on the land. The story is called The Greatest Estate Developer. As he stomps his shovel, he activates his skill to reveal a 3D mapping to the whole plane, with the purpose to build a high-rise buildings to turn the world upside down. He calls out to the man with blue hair named Javier. He laughs hysterically, saying that it's all money. While he laughs with the expected money he might made, Javier asks was he finally lost it. A few years ago where the story started, Huo Kim gets a notification from some kind of system saying that he has been chosen to have a random wish granted by the Absolute. As the system congrats him, Huo Kim wakes up in another body. The system adds that he is now a character of Knight of Blood and Iron. Kim confuses to see what just happened, because Knight of Blood and Iron is the book he read last night. Then the system wish him good luck and cheers for him. Kim then thoughts one of those novels where he have possessed someone from a character in the web novel he read, wondering whether he is in a different world. But then, if he is, why is he laying flat in the middle of the dirt road? Though, when he tries to stand up, he feels freezing cold, then his jaw gets dislocated. The notification appears, saying that his jaw has gone out of place from sleeping on the ground. Kim slapped the notification to make it disappears, saying that the notification is pissing him off. Kim then thinks of the character that was left on the ground in the story, as he is now taken over that character. Suddenly there's a man calls him. He says that he has been looking for Kim all night. The man is actually the protagonist of Knight of Blood and Iron, Javier Esrahan. Kim knows that in the book, Javier is a renowned swordsman, but he starts off as an unknown knight working for the country lord, Arcos Frontera. And at that point at the story, Kim knows that Javier is the Lord's son's bodyguard. Kim freaks out knowing that he has taken over the body of Lloyd Frontera, the son of Lord Arcos. Looking at Lloyd, Javier says that he never calls Lloyd a hooligan before, but it's good that Lloyd is aware now. The system notify Lloyd that Javier seems to be in a good mood, so Lloyd tells her to shut up as he can see how Javier is grinning. Going back to his manor, Javier makes the fire asking Lloyd whether he remembers why he ended up like that. As Lloyd now has different soul, so he has no recollection of what happened, Javier tells him that he started drinking in the afternoon, got drunk, destroyed the pub furniture, and then he passed out on his way back to the manor. Lloyd thinks that is really a life of hooligan. Javier adds that Lord Arcos was worried and sent him. Lloyd may be a hooligan, but as his son. If Lloyd found dead on the road with his jaw out of place, Lord Arcos might be sad. Lloyd realized how Javier mocks him cynically, while thinking how good it would be if the floor is heated as Korean traditional flooring system in. Javier then asks to leave, as he will report what happened to Lloyd to Lord Arcos. But before Javier leaves, Lloyd hold him off, confirming that their family at this point has a lot of debt. Being alone in his room, Lloyd thoughts that he knows everything that happens in the story, because, just the night before, he read the last chapter of the web novel. And of course, he knows what happens to Lloyd. At the beginning of the story, the Baron Arcos and his Baroness fall prey to an evil conman, lose all of their land and fortune. In the end, they commit suicide. While Lloyd becomes a beggar, drinking all day long and then coughs up blood and dies as well. Thinking all about it, Lloyd is mad, saying what's the point of being an aristocrat while it will be the same miserable life, like it was in his previous life in Korea. He then wonders what is the absolute guy had done to him. What did Lloyd wish for that he would put Lloyd in the body of someone with such ending? As his rampaging anger subside, the next day at the Frontera County, Lloyd's mother Marbella Frontera walks with Javier, checks up on Lloyd. She scolds him because he broke things at the pub last night. But Kim, the actual soul inside Lloyd's body, is reading the book last night. Then, now his mother demands him to go to the pub again and apologize. As of now, Lloyd is different, and he needs to clean up the mess that body made. Both Marbella and Javier is surprised and highly confused to see Lloyd will do it. So a little later that day, Lloyd, escorted by Javier, goes to the pub. While walking on the road, there can be seen people are actually afraid of Lloyd. One that can't hide can only corner himself. while the others then able to. Either they ran away or closes their door because of Lloyd's presence. The system shows up, tells him that the villagers absolutely detest him, which Lloyd actually knows already. Then he asks Javier why he was following him, and Javier explained that the Lord has ordered him to escort Lloyd so that what happened yesterday does not recur. As Lloyd tries to confirm it, Javier explained further that it's for the villagers' protection, so Lloyd won't do anything to them. Now, the first thing he needs to do is to get rid the scumbag image that he has. That way, he can at least get himself some food when he is a beggar. Thinking about it further, if he can short out his family debt before that happens, he can live peacefully as the heir to a country baron, and live a sweet, comfortable life to a ripe old age. He then asks the system looking for a cheat code or skill he can use, and he actually does have a skill, which is Human Scum, a passive skill that causes others to furrow their brows. And Rowdy Drunkard, if this skill is used, he become an absolute ass. Agitates Lloyd, waving the system window like he is crazy person in front of Javier, making him unaware that he is already arrives at the pub. Inside the pub, Lloyd now knows what mess he had done to the place. He tried to genuinely apologize to the pub's owner, but he is too scared and on the position of an extreme high alert. But the owner says that Lloyd doesn't need to apologize, as Lloyd thinks that's probably what would happen when a scumbag suddenly becomes kind. So he changes his demeanor, becomes ruder and apologize again. This time, the pub's owner isn't on high alert anymore, and with that, Lloyd head home. While walking passes a bridge, Lloyd asks Javier why after Lloyd apologizes, he doesn't seems to look happy. Javier explained that everything Lloyd destroyed last night, his furniture and decoration, they were all purchased with the pub owner's hard-earned money, and he likely won't be satisfied until he is compensated. Not only that, the pub's owners is looking after his mother as she was sick after the last winter. Combine it with what Lloyd did, Javier asks him to imagine how hard it must have been for the man. Lloyd looks annoyed, thinking if he had to be compensated. He knows it well that his family is in a big debt. Suddenly, a moment of realization comes to Lloyd. He thoughts of the Ondal floors, as there's none in this world he is living now, and if he build them, they would definitely sell. The hooligan Lloyd Frontera could never dream of that stuff. Now Kim moves to another world resides as Lloyd, so he able to think about the stuff he had learned at his previous life, as he is majored in civil engineering, and during his time as a military engineer in the army, he construct a house all by himself. Not to mention, he has worked day and night working at construction sites too. With the realization, now he can settle all of Baron's debts. Then he tells Javier to go back to the pub to get his first order, as Javier asks why would he goes back there. The notification appears, saying that his true journey has begun. It enables the next feature of the cheat codes, called RP system, which he can earn by improving relationship with key characters. As Lloyd thoughts about it, there's no info about how to use it as of right now. The only thing he can do is to do what it says. Looking at Javier, he can see that his approval towards Lloyd is -30, no surprise considering how Lloyd had behaved. He then tries to do something, which is trying to buy Javier's favor, saying that he thinks Javier is very good looking, which is decreased the rating approval even more by 1 point. As he fails to improve his relationship with Javier, he proceeds to head to the pub. At the pub, Lloyd gives the owner a contract, as Lloyd will be the builder and the owner will be the purchaser. He will pay off the damage he caused as the construction fees, then asks the owner to sign it. But the pub's owner is suspicious towards Lloyd, then uses skill called Stonewall Heart. Lloyd thinks that his plan can't fail at the start, as he didn't want to resort to it. He uses his hooligan image, intimidating the pub's owner to sign the contract. Being scared to death, the owner sign it, while the system mocks him, saying that Lloyd is absolute garbage. With that, Lloyd is excited to have his first order, thanking the owner while adding that he made the right choice. And Javier is confused looking at his behavior, as of the current Lloyd is so different from before. Lloyd then prepares to build the house with the Ondal flooring system. Javier calls out to him, saying that he threatened the pub's owner to sign the contract. He asks whether Lloyd is coming up with new ways to cause trouble. Lloyd says that Javier is not as reasonable as he seems, asking whether he ever heard of cognitive distortion, adding that it's where he believes someone will do this and that because of what they did in the past. It's the distortion caused by prejudice and negative thinking clinging to his brain. Javier refutes, saying that it's based on experience and statistic, which Lloyd says that experience and statistic are all from the past. Javier is surprises, wondering to himself whether Lloyd was always that smooth of a talker. As Lloyd starts to dig the ground, he claims that he will make the pub owner and his mother smile for sure, because those smile to Lloyd will be the foundation for Lloyd to make him money. He then scoop out the dirt, move it, pack it, and repeat. As he finishes excavating the dirt, he build the frame. The timber comes from the warehouse at the Baron's residence, and it will be a traditional timber frame. Uses the clay he dug up from the river to complete the walls, and run out of air as he done it all alone. Realizes how weak Lloyd's body is. Javier mocks him, saying that it wasn't much, angering Lloyd that it took a week to build it. As Lloyd tries to finish the building, Javier wonders whether Lloyd is really trying to build something for the pub owners. He can see how Lloyd is trembling from the fatigue of overworking for a week. As he tries to swing the axe, he doesn't have enough strength and about to fall down. But Javier catches him and decides to help him, asking the measurement for the wood he needs to cut, which Lloyd confusedly explained to him. Then Javier throws the logs in the air, swing the axe, and makes the wood slab that Lloyd needs. Truly, that is about someone who is about to become a master swordsman, thinking who needs modern equipment if he has Javier. Then Lloyd tap Javier's shoulder. He suggests him that when he is done, why not he helps Lloyd with digging. Javier is mad, thinking that instead of thanking him, Lloyd dares to give him more work to do. Truly a hopeless man Lloyd is. The notification also appears to Lloyd. That tells him Javier regrets his decision. With the help of the system, Lloyd knows that Javier is curious with how Lloyd will con them, and he needs to help finishing the build to know. In the end, Javier decides to help him, digging the excavation in the house to make the channel for the hot air that will heat the floor. As the construction finishes, Lloyd cheers happily. He also put a logo in the house for his construction brand logo. He then provokes Javier with the con he has been cooking for the pub owner, with the wood in the fire pit, and hot air going around the channel then goes to the chimney. The mother of the owner is happily laid down on the floor, adding that her stiff joint feels so relaxed. The pub's owner himself couldn't believe what Lloyd has done, making it feels like magic itself in the eye of the people in that world. The pub owner thanks him, and Javier is shocked to learn that what Lloyd had said, that he will make them both smile. He thought that there is no way Lloyd Frontera would do such a thing, but somehow, he made it happen. Looking at how the two-person in front of him smiles, Javier smiles. Then his approval rating increases by 2. And of course Lloyd notices as well, grinning by himself. Lloyd teases him, saying that he is not a total garbage after all, which Javier keeps denying. But regardless, Lloyd made a loss with the house, with the price of the timber. He has broken ground now, and he has a model house that he will use to show other potential customers. A few days later, the masses gather on the site, looking to see the house while Lloyd watches over them. When the person comes out, he expresses how warm the floor was, saying that it could melt him. Lloyd then offers them the plan for the construction, even goes as far as giving them discount for 10% off. The system tells Lloyd that the villagers don't trust Lloyd, so he uses his hooligan image trying to intimidate the villagers. But then there's someone coming calling out to him. It turns out that his father, Arcos Frontera, comes to ask what he think he is doing there. Lloyd is nervous as he expected his father would whoop his ass. At the Frontera's manor, Lloyd had dinner with his father. Lloyd thought that he had managed to avoid his father until then. But why is he stops Lloyd from building? Lord Arcos then asks him about what he is up to this time. Then Lloyd tries to be as rude as possible, explains that the pub owner ordered an Ondal room, so he built him one. As Lloyd about to leave, his father tells him not to worry about their family's debt. He tells Lloyd that he will get them out of the trouble soon, and asks Lloyd to not get himself too involved in that. Lloyd thought that he heard that world before. It was his father in the real world, and he knows that it was just lie, and he knows that it's not okay. As Lloyd leaves the dinner room, he tells Lord Arcos to not give up, because he wouldn't be either. Like how Lloyd wishes to say the same thing to his father a few years ago. As Lloyd thinking about the order he receives, that's about 89 house in total, and has also receives half of the money for the construction. Appears two Monolender, intending to enter the Baron's office. Lloyd is surprised to see they are not greeting the son of the Baron. Inside the office, they pester the Baron to pay the money he loaned, saying that it's been 5 days since the date they agreed upon. They go as far as threaten to take action themselves. Lloyd peeks from behind them, then thoughts what a perfect timing it is, and having a terrifying smile like devises something. At the night before, when Lloyd gets RP points from his relationship with Javier is improving, he finds out that he can invest it to get abilities. He mocks the system for giving him the information, making her shutting down. As the system scans him, she detects several skills Lloyd possessed from the last life, which is soil mechanics, hydraulics, structural mechanics, water supply, sewage theory, steel structure design and concrete design, advanced design programming. Lastly, the system mocks him, saying that he knows more than he looks. Then she shows the available skills based on existing knowledge. As his point are enough, he immediately takes the skills. When he tries to use the skill basic surveying, Lloyd is surprised to have his eyes glow green. Upon looking out the window, he can map the yard in the manor. Now he has the ability to survey without a GPS. And another skill is basic design. He can draw something in the window that he alone can see. Lloyd thoughts that moving forward is going to be a lot easier with it, but Javier alone won't be enough to cover all the construction. He thoughts how nice it would be if he could summon some heavy machinery with his knowledge. Suddenly, the system appears saying that there is something Lloyd wants to summon. It called Random Summon Game. Spend RP to pick a summon with unique personalities and a wide range of skills. As of right now, Lloyd only has 1 point, and for the first summon he needs 50 points. Lloyd thinks of how he might get a mythical creatures that able to function like a heavy machinery. He then sets his mind that he must obtain more RP point. That's when the fat money lender slapped the table on the Lord Arcos. He suggests that if the Lord doesn't have any money, he could sell the Baroness and her ladies to a place that he know, adding that they would fetch a hefty sum of gold. As Lord Arcos is shocked with the suggestion, Lloyd appears behind the fat man, saying that just because they are a lender doesn't mean they have to lack manners. He then asks for the warrant. Both of the moneylenders are confused. Then Lloyd explains according to the law of the empire, all nobles may exercise the right to protect their interests as vassals of the king, adding that entry into the residence of a noble family without a warrant is considered trespassing. He then calls out to Javier to come in. He commands him to cut their arm as they are trespasser. As the moneylenders try to rebuke, but Lloyd looks at them calmly. Javier drew his sword, and they ran away shouting nonsense. Lord Arcos then scolds him for doing that, but Lloyd just dropped a bag of gold coins, saying that it was the money he collected from the order of the houses. Lord Arcos assumes that he extorted the villagers for money. Then Javier backs Lloyd up. He says that he will make sure that Lloyd will fulfill his order. And with that, Lord Arcos will not be in the way of Lloyd's business anymore. As they finish dealing with it, both of them ask to leave. In the hall, Javier asks cynically Lloyd where does Lloyd know such a law, which Lloyd claims that he just picks it up somewhere. It turns out that he knows it from reading the book. When the Baron and Baroness committed suicide, Javier, who left without a master to serve, met with the two lone lender. That's when Javier says the law, and after he says it, it was off with their head, which Lloyd feels so good knowing the content of the story. And with that, as Lloyd expected, the notification appears. The Baron approval rating is increases by 6 and gives Lloyd 60 RP points. At night that day, he went to the training yard while making sure that no one around. He then asks the system to show the summoning game, then start on playing. As he clicks on it, a magic circle that looks like a gears appeared. He is so shocked to see that it looks so over the top. But it turns out to be so tiny and so freaking noisy, and what comes out is actually a hamster. Lloyd looks like he couldn't care less and let the hamster fell to the ground. While Lloyd looks disappointed, the hamster looks innocently hopeful towards his master. Lloyd says that it's a dud, shocking the hamster. When Lloyd is going to leave the hamster, he talks to him saying that he can help him. He comments something like shooting acorns, pew pew or what, which the hamster explains that it's not. The hamster then spits out the user manuals. It says that Podong is an adorable hamster. Please give Podong lots of love. Feed Podong one of the enclosed sunflower seeds and its size will change. The red sunflower seeds will make Podong grows to gigantic proportions, while the blue one will make Podong shrinks back. As Lloyd is curious how much he will grow, he feeds the red seed to Podong, and it grows. It grows so much that able to slap Lloyd, slamming him to the ground. It turns out that Podong can grows to over 30 feet. And that's not all, he also lost his innocence, having a grin smug on its face. It reveals all its skill. The first skill is digging starts at level 1. Packing dirt starts at level 2, which is he just basically rolling on the ground with its weight. And cheek pockets at level 1, which is he is able to store dirt in its mouth then drop it somewhere else. Even though he is drenched in saliva, Lloyd is happy to know what Podong can do, and now he got the heavy equipment in form of Podong. But the problem is how he can explain it to suddenly have a huge thing with him. Lloyd is afraid everyone that see it will get suspicious. His shabby excuse is that he will bring a book on summoning with him, and it will explain that he is a master of summoners. And next he needs to figure out the labor part of the project. The only thing he can do is to call out the family knights. He gathers them and trains the mindsets of safety first. The 30 soldiers of Frontera's barony is confused, as there are a lot of them is still sleepy. Lloyd is thinking how frustrating it is that the soldier get paid for doing no works, while the baron has a ton of debt. Thanks to it, he now has a free labor, then order them, saying that they are all soldiers, and the point to be won so to do some work. While thinking when he is in the army back then, he spent more time digging and pulling weeds than actually training. He then points out towards the clay, which he claims he spent last night digging up, while in truth that Podong is the one doing it. He then says that they are about to break ground on their estate's renaissance, about the Ondal construction business for the people. And to do that, he wants the soldiers to move the clay to the construction site. The soldiers actually look so dejected seeing Lloyd ordering them. It is as Lloyd's expected, while at the same time the senior knight calls Lloyd asking what he was ordering his soldiers, which is also as Lloyd's expectation that he will confront him. He then explained that there are 3 knights in the Baron's land. The 3 knights are Newman, the highest order, which is the man that confronts Lloyd. Under him is Bayern, and the protagonist of the novel, Javier Esrahan. At the start of the book, when the estate falls into ruin, Javier and Bayern remain loyal until the very end. But Newman is the first to betray the Baron and run. That's because Newman sells information on the Baron to the con men and leaves him with a huge debt. Lloyd then scheming something for this land's foremost knights, Newman. He provokes him saying that he told him to dig dirt, and as their commander, Newman won't tolerate that. Lloyd thoughts that the truth is, Newman is not happy because Lloyd is close to making money which could pay off the family debt, while saying that he has Lord Arco's permission. But Newman still doesn't accept that, saying that Lloyd might be able to fool the Lord, adding that Lloyd's prior conduct says otherwise. He adds that he can think of no other reason for Lloyd to use his men for personal gains. But Lloyd nonchalantly says that it sounds right, as it's not enough. Lloyd also says that if he wants a beat down. Of course Newman is pissed off, to the point that the vein in his face would explode. Lloyd thoughts on how fragile Newman is. If he ever played in online games, his finger would be flying across the keyboard. Then Lloyd provokes him further. He throws a shovel worth of dirt into Newman's face, making the soldiers shocked. Even for the Baron's son, Lloyd can still be killed with a single strike from the knight. But Lloyd points his shovel to Newman's face, challenging him into a duel. At the manor, Javier asks Lloyd whether he really confident in fighting Newman. Instead of talking nicely, Lloyd mocks Javier, saying that of course he is not, adding that he is a low-level sword expert knight how can use the mana heart skill, where Lloyd is just nobody. And he asks Javier what he was thinking. Was he even thinking? As if it's not enough, he adds, is he even thinking in that head of his, mocking Javier even further. Javier is mad. He was so close to cutting Lloyd down. Fortunately, he can hold it down, while thinking about it, to suddenly throw dirt in Newman's face and challenge him to a duel. Javier thought Lloyd was back to his old hooligan ways. But for that, he think it all seems too calculated, as Lloyd asks the Baron to separate them in order to pick a fight with Newman, and then designated Sir Bayern as a substitute overseer to supervise the work of the soldier. And now, Lloyd says he is not confident about the duel. Javier have no idea with what's going on, and wishes he could cut Lloyd down. Then Lloyd asks Javier to do something. He asks him to teach how to use a sword, which Javier blatantly refuses. He tells Lloyd that his job is only to watch him, while adding that if scum like Lloyd, as it wasn't bad enough, he rephrased that human trash such as Lloyd learns how to use a sword, others around him will be in even greater danger. Lloyd comments how Javier should tones it down when he corrects himself, while confirming that Javier really doesn't want to teach him. He then offers Javier that he will cure his insomnia if he teaches Lloyd how to sword fight, which surprises Javier, as he doesn't tell anyone. Well, of course from the book Lloyd read, he also knows what caused Javier's insomnia while he smirks on the facts that he knows, while Javier looks so confused. Lloyd explained that in the book, Javier is on the verge of transitioning from a high-level sword expert to a sword master. He is right on the border of human and superhuman. With his sense so sharpened, there's no way he can sleep. In other words, it's the side effect of being a sword master. He also thought that there's no way Javier would know that in the backwoods like that. He then asks again whether they had a deal or not. It's no use for Javier to pretend while having insomnia written all over his face. Well, Javier decides to give it a try, while not to forget to look down on Lloyd. He says that he is so sure Lloyd will fail, as there is no remedy he hasn't tried to cure his insomnia. From sleep cognition therapy, herbs, aromatherapy, exercise, and even Eastern medicine. Well, after looking down on Lloyd that much, not to forget how he smirks earlier, Javier sleeps like a baby. Lloyd looks so satisfied, thinking that he got Javier all figured out. He also knew how he was going to cure his insomnia. In the book, Javier first fell into a deep sleep whilst listening to a magic spell, while Lloyd reads his reinforced concrete textbook, which at least 18 times more sleep-inducing than any magic spell. And with that, Lloyd smiles wickedly and claims that Javier's swordsmanship is his. And the next day, looking so good after his well sleep last night, Javier tells Lloyd to run 50 laps around the perimeter. Javier then gets nervous, looking at Lloyd, who does it without even complaining, and start running. With the weak physique Lloyd has, he start running. Even though he starts slow, he simply doesn't stop. As he made his first lap, he pester Javier, saying that he don't like that. He wants to learn some sword skills. And he keeps running. At this point, his ultimate motivation is just to prove Javier wrong. On the next lap, he tells Javier that he knows Javier's thoughts, where he assumes Lloyd wouldn't do it. And he also knows that Javier assumes that Lloyd would just refuses. Then, Javier would be like, claiming that Lloyd doesn't have what it takes to learn his swordsmanship and refuses to teach him. With the help of the system, Lloyd is just bullying Javier into doing what he wants now, not to mention the mental bullying he did to Javier. Now, with the intention to have Javier's sword technique and to bully him, Lloyd runs around the lap while also laughing hysterically inside of his head, while honestly he thoughts that it is really hard, and he would be lying if he said it wasn't. Compared to when he was in Korea, this is so much better, as back then, without even a family to welcome him, he awoke each day in a tiny room at a boarding house. He would spend all day carrying bricks up to the roof of a 4-story building, and all night loading and unloading delivery trucks. All of that so he wouldn't starve to death. He held on to the hope that one day, things would get better. Compared to that pain and that despair, smiling happily, running for 50 laps is nothing for him now. Looking at how determined Lloyd is, Javier thoughts that he will teach Lloyd his sword fighting techniques. At the manor, in the Baron's office, Lord Arcos says that he can't believe Lloyd has disrespected Newman when he has protected their family for generations. He thought Lloyd had come to his sense recently, but Lord Arcos assumes otherwise. And as of now, Lord Arcos has no just cause to stop the duel. However, he asks Newman to not be too harsh with him, as he is still his heir. He requests Newman to do enough, but not to hurt him seriously, pull back his punches and help him to go back to his sense. But Newman schemes something else, as duels don't always go the way he wants. If he cuts off Lloyd's head, killing him, and the Baron takes issue with that, he will kill both Baron and Baroness too, then disguise it as a suicide. And as planned, he will leave that tiny village and go somewhere bigger. Thanks to Lloyd he called hooligan, things are speeding up for Newman, and he ends his night laughing with his schemes. A month later, in the county training ground, the day of the battle finally came. The Baron, Baroness, Javier, and Sir Bayern is nervous looking how the duel will go. Newman asks Lloyd whether he is ready. With a shovel in hand, Lloyd arrogantly says that he is. The villagers and the knights are confused seeing Lloyd use his shovel to fight Newman, which of course agitates him. It is then reveals that Lloyd asks the blacksmith for a solid iron shovel, which will be used in the battle with Newman. While Lord Arcos thoughts that it was all a joke in the end, seeing how he behaves. But Javier knows, and didn't believe so. What Lloyd showed him over the last month is performing basic training in the small hours without a peep, running around the construction sites to teach the village engineers about Ondal, and then sword work practice right up until he went to sleep. Javier knows it well. That was the disposition of someone preparing a joke, and Lloyd is more serious than ever. Then Lord Arcos begin the duel. Newman looks as ready as ever, but decides not to draw his sword. On the other side, Lloyd showing an awkward movement for someone who fights in a sword battle. He looks more lackluster, more than ready, let alone the shovel in his hand. Thoughts that Lloyd is playing with Newman. He swung his sword with all the anger he had. But with only an iron shovel in hand, Lloyd doesn't even try and easily able to deflect the strike. Assuming that it was luck, Newman tries again, saying that luck doesn't strike twice. Yet, Lloyd also able to easily deflects the attack. Even Javier looks surprised knowing that Lloyd's movements is so efficient. It's a skill adapted specifically for real-life fighting. As if that world's swordsmanship has evolved through the ages. Looking at how Newman is surprised, Lloyd knows it all too well, as he was a Korean. Because it was the essence of modern hand-to-hand combat, the bayonet training. While continuously attacking back Newman, Lloyd thoughts that the shovel is a much formidable weapon that anyone there thinks. The wide blade can be used as a shield that can cut through thick tree roots. What's more is that it can be used to be a pogo stick, which is, honestly, look really ridiculous, mocking Newman even further. Now, even with how Lloyd trained, it still looks like he is just joking in the duel. But, as Newman comes again, Lloyd keeps defending skillfully, as the first weapon he prepared to destroy Newman is the shovel, and the second is the basic sword fighting steps he learned from Javier. The last thing he reveals is the skill called shoveling from the system, which he got from the points from Javier's approvals rating while he was training, and 5 from Baron and Baroness seeing their son work hard for the first time in his life. Then the system gives him that skill for 40 RP points. Getting more agitated as the fight goes on, Newman finally uses his mana heart, as he thoughts that he won't use it against a civilian. But getting mad over the humiliation from Lloyd, he decides to use it anyway. Both Lloyd and Javier know that Newman finally summons the power from his mana heart, and from that point on, the fight will get more fiercer. Javier explained that for someone without the skills, it takes over 10 years for a regular person, and for talented person it would takes 5 years to be able to summons mana heart. At this point, he thought it would be impossible for his master, Lloyd, to block an attack from Newman. But Lloyd surprises them even more. He reveals his 4th weapon in the duel, the mana conjuring skill that made Javier the strongest man in the world in the book, the Israhan core technique, which allows him to absorb Newman's mana upon contact. And with all the mana he gathers, he swings his shovel towards Newman, slapping Newman, and to his surprise that his teeth flew off. Lloyd doesn't stop there, he keeps beating Newman and lastly slamming him to the ground. Surprises all the eyes that witness it. Lord Arcos then declares that the duel is over and the winner is Lloyd. But Lloyd didn't stop. He tries to hit Newman even more as he says that it is time for him to take a pounding. Lord Arcos tries to stop him, but Lloyd doesn't bat an eye. He just whacks Newman repeatedly, embarrassing him even further. Sir Bayern and Javier wonder whether Lloyd has finally lost it, while the knights try to stop Lloyd, grabbing him and repeatedly telling him stop. Lloyd pretends to agree to stop and tells them to let go. He stops for a moment, catching his breath, then starts beating Newman again. Javier understands that Lloyd hits Newman precisely to hurt every single part of his body. Looking at Lloyd's calm face, Javier thoughts that Lloyd has already predicted the events to come, as Lloyd looks like already knows everything. Javier remembers how 15 days ago, Lloyd demanded him to teach the Israhan core technique. Lloyd asks and keep nagging. He did not ask him to teach him how to steal and explain that the method of the technique. The core draws in mana from the surroundings, not just the mana that is conjured by the individual. Javier didn't tell anyone yet about the technique as it was still unfinished, so he asks where does Lloyd knows it, which Lloyd says that Javier talks about it in his sleep every time Lloyd helped putting him out to bed with his lullaby. Javier apologized to Lloyd that he cannot teach him that, as he says it is not finished yet. But Lloyd says as he already knows it, asking if he can help Javier to perfect it. That means Javier will teach it to him. Then he starts explaining that Javier tries to take the outside mana, then combine it with the mana heart within him. As a result, it bounces and goes out. He thinks that seems obvious. From Javier mana heart's point of view, the outside mana is a foreign object. So he suggests that Javier should change the way he looks at it, instead of combining the mana from within and what's he absorbed, but to condense it separately nearby and using it around the outside mana heart itself. So in that moment, Lloyd able to help perfecting the Israhan core technique, which Javier had been agonizing over for a long time. On the first try, Javier was able to successfully get up to 3 circles, and with more training, he is sure he can get up to 5 or more circles. With that, Javier's approval rating increased by 5, and Lloyd mockingly says that he has nothing to do other than learning how to use mana heart. But he don't needs all of that. He wants Javier to teach him the absorbing bit, adding that he don't need the mana from the air. He just want the mana that comes into contact with his body, as he is determined that with that skill, he would able to beat Newman. And he did win, easily. Lord Arcos finally had enough of it. He shouts towards Lloyd to stop, as he won't tolerate Lloyd sullying Sir Newman's honor any further. And Lloyd stops for a moment. He tells his father to check under the table's cloth, and decides if those words befitting of Sir Newman. Lord Arcos sees a lot of letter. He is surprised to learn that those letters between Newman and Towards, the man who defrauded Lord Arcos in a real estate deal. Lord Arcos didn't believe what he saw. The financial status of his land, his preferences, plan to forge real estate documents, and everything else that they discussed in those letters. Newman is surprised to see that as he hid the letters in the wall, and Lloyd is happily grinning, as he knows that Javier later would find them according to the story in the book, and he had Podong scamper around for them last night. Lord Arcos finally let the news sink in. Anyone else would demanding Newman's head right now, but Lloyd knows that his father, the Lord, is a kind person as described in the book. He knows so well that a kind leader and a good leader are two completely different things. So he proposed to deal with the punishment of the night. He suggests that to drop a vicious mouse on Newman's head. If he is hurt by the mouse, let him be exiled from the land. Otherwise demote him to a foot soldier and give him the opportunity to repent. The others are confused, even Lord Arcos himself. while Sir Bayer thought that was a wise and generous suggestion while also a warning to others. In the end, Lord Arkos agrees to do that, then asks Newman whether he has any objection, which Newman says that he doesn't, and thanking him for the mercy Lloyd shows. Lloyd then thoughts for a moment that if one's offer a guilty party a merciful outcome, will they have a change of heart and repent? Not a chance. In fact, they will grow more stubborn and cunning and think of ways to rise above ones. As Newman is grinning that Lloyd will regret his decision, because he will have revenge on the Baron's family. Lloyd notices that Newman is smiling, telling him that it's nice to see, though he adds it will be for the last time he is able to. Newman wonders what that's supposed to mean, while Lloyd feeds Podong the red seed, and with indifferent looks, he throws Podong in the air, saying that the best way to ask for forgiveness is to remember that there is none. Podong grows to be a massive mouse, readily lands on top of Newman's head, and with that Lloyd announced the exile of Newman while also revealing that he now a summoner. On the next day, at the county of Frontera, Podong dig out the road in the village, making Javier wonders what Podong is doing, and Lloyd explained that Podong is carving out a road. And now Lloyd can be seen so happy that the once feeble soldier look like proper construction workers, marking the real work can begin. He explained that there was once an ancient city called Rome, and they were absolutely enamored with roads. The method they used to create the Great Appian Way, Lloyd will use it starting now. It will go from the Baron's Manor to the base of the eastern mountain. Javier tries to ask further, why is it road? As Lloyd tells him to wait and see, because it is going to put their land on the map. What he asks next is why Lloyd suddenly acquire this knowledge, as he built a heating system that no one had ever heard of and summoned a high-level creature out of nowhere. The system window appears, saying that Javier has suspicions about his identity. Javier asks whether Lloyd is really his master Lloyd. From what Lloyd knows in the book about Javier, if he finds out that he is someone else who stole the body of his lord's son, Javier may very well use his sword on Lloyd. He would do that and more. But there's no reason to be worried, because Lloyd has a special skill for times like these. Lloyd uses the skill called stubborn insistence, saying that he studied while no one was looking. Javier argues that all Lloyd did is drinking, which he asks whether Javier watching him 24 hours a day. Javier then asks about the summoning magic, because for a skilled mage with 20 years of training still would have a hard time. Which Lloyd says that how can Javier can be a genius at his 20s, and so Lloyd is, adding that he was born with the gift of summoning magic, so what? Lloyd then tells Javier that if he has nothing else to say, he is leaving as he has things to do, which is the end game of the special skill of stubborn insistence. Speedy topic change. Lloyd then tells Sir Bayern to see the work on the road while he is gone, and he went with Javier, saying that it was a far place, adding that he needs to take back some money that was stolen from the family. Meanwhile, in the small town Ludinia, the real Elstate conman, Towards is frustrated knowing that he lost a lot of money from gambling. That's when Lloyd barges in the room, surprises the conman. He introduces himself, surprises Towards. The guard asks him whether he should kill Lloyd, which Towards actually refuses. Instead, he tells his guard to run. So the guard takes him and jumps from the window. What welcomed them below is Javier with his sword, readily to fight. Javier tells the guard to leave Towards and walk away. As if he refuses, Javier will see the guard as a co-conspirator, while he thinks that Lloyd is actually right, as he knows that they will try and escape out the back window and tells Javier to wait for them there. Lloyd explained that after Javier loses his master, Baron Frontera, Javier vows revenge and manages to find the conman, Towards, and fights his bodyguard. It's the first time Javier coming face to face with a dark enchanter. Back in the story from the book, he had a struggles to hold his own against the guard's gravitational magic. But now is different. Back then Javier doesn't have the perfect Asrahan technique. But now, not only the technique is perfected, he is equipped with a triple circle mana heart, which makes him easily nullify the gravitational magic. And looking on how powerful Javier is, the guard ran away saying that the contract he has with Towards is no longer valid. Then Javier looks Towards, saying how serious of a crime it is to commit fraud against a noble family, then intending to cut off his leg and have him crawl to the courthouse, which stopped by Lloyd saying that Javier is out of control, because if Towards goes to court, the court will have Towards' head. Javier is confused, seeing that Lloyd is showing pity for another person and does as Lloyd says. A little later inside the inn, tied up Towards is nervously trembling. Lloyd then says that there's no need to be so scared, adds that everyone gets a little greedy sometimes, and he can see why Towards made most of his opportunity. With a warm smile, Lloyd tells him that the law is a bit harsh to behead people for it. So Lloyd asks Towards to hands over all of the Baron's remaining assets, which Towards happily does so for a forgiveness. But then, as it's a given and they are just getting started, Lloyd gives him a contract and asks Towards to sign it. Lloyd explained that it is a normal employment contract with a paid salary. However, 80% of Towards' salary will be kept back as repayment for the money he defrauded the Frontera, adding that after just 520 years, Towards will be paid all of his debt, which of course shocking him. And now Javier knows the real reason for Lloyd to pity and forgives Towards, as Lloyd thinks he wouldn't be stupid enough to kill the guy who owes him a debt. He wouldn't let that go to waste, as he will sucks him dry for the rest of his life. Towards tries to argue that he has never seen such a shamefully unjust contract, but Lloyd says that he can't force Towards to sign it, and asks him to go to court instead, which of course forcefully makes Towards tears up and signs the contract. On the morning next day, while they were going home with a carriage, Javier says that they have got some money from Towards, so they should not have to worry about the interest for a few months. But Lloyd actually thinks of something else. He wants to use the money to invest in hiring more people, as of now, 30 soldiers are not enough. But what worries him is that even if he put up a wanted sign, he wonders whether the villagers would apply, as Lloyd's hooligan reputation is really annoying. But a few days later, when Lloyd put up a wanted sign, a lot of villagers shows up. Lloyd is so sure that the villagers hates him, but Javier explained that after Lloyd delivers the Ondal system on time, taking care of the traitor, and even called upon a summon, Lloyd now considered a trustworthy and talented man. But Javier knows that Lloyd is actually a garbage. But what's important is the villagers' opinion. Even one of them is going as far as thanking Lloyd that their child would suffer from a severe cold every time there was a cold spell. But thanks to the Ondal system this year, they no longer have to worry. And Lloyd is nervous. While all he wants is trying to satisfy his greed, now he is all embarrassed. The man informs him further that he has a relative in the neighboring Lacono land, saying that he wanted to know if Lloyd would accept an order from them as well. And Lloyd finally knows that the times he awaits finally comes, the first stage of his big plan. He didn't build all those Ondals at a loss for nothing. Now he will use the travel expenses as an excuse to increase the cost, and he will clean it up. Javier also notices the shifty face Lloyd has, then he wonders what he built the road leading to the mountain for, which Lloyd then takes Javier to see the mountain. He says that pretty soon, those mountains will be stripped bare. As Ondal requires an astronomical amount of fuel, those threes won't be enough. Knowing that would happen, Lloyd explained that is precisely why he built the road towards the mountain. He intends to mine the black coal, and laughs hysterically, saying that he will sell it at a huge markup. Once ones get used to an Ondal, there's no getting out of it, adding that of course, he will give the people of his land a discount, a small one, a very small one, which Javier thoughts how sneaky and devious Lloyd is. But as always, the system let Lloyd knows, and he calls out to Javier. Lloyd explains that if he doesn't do it, they wouldn't be able to repay their debts. Now Javier understands that. Then he says that the previous Baron leaves the black coal undisturbed because he is unaware of the weak bedrock, and the mine collapsed. But Lloyd is confident, as he has the benefit of modern excavation technology, the shield tunneling method. Again, it is a thing that Javier had never heard of, but he decides to trust Lloyd for now, as his lord is a new man and he has a plan for it. Unknown to both of Lloyd and Javier, inside the tunnel lives an ant colony. Not your average ant colony, but that a single one is as massive as 2 stories building. Building the high-rise model in real time with just a few gesture of his hand. That was what Lloyd imagining as he draws the modeling tunnel for the mine he is going to build. And he gets so bored doing it with the laser that comes out from his hand is taking too long. Hoping that he could summon 100 undead workers that he didn't have to pay. The system calls out to him saying that he don't like it. The system tells him to draw with his hand again. But then Lloyd immediately got his act together, thanking the system, and tells her that she is the best. He explained that after the Newman incident, he raised his approval rating with the Baron, Baroness, Javier, and Bayern, which gives him 639 RP. With those points, Lloyd went on leveling up spree, and he was able to gain all sort of skills. After finishes the road, with the newly skills he acquired, Lloyd goes to the mine, scanning the entrance looking for a way towards the mine. The skill that he uses allows him to see up to 5 meters in depth, and with that he is able to find a safe path. The problem is, he need to dig it out as quickly as possible. It would take too long on human power alone, and they will tire out too quickly. While Podong is in bed sick from constructing the road and all the long-distance jobs. Even if Podong recovers, he would be too big, so it would be ended up too risky. Having no other way, Lloyd summons the gacha summon window, as he has plenty of RP points left. And so he did, with the hopes to get what he needs to forge the way towards the mine of the black coal. Lloyd summons his next creature. What comes out now is a pink caterpillar, which Lloyd ignores again, making her fell face down to the ground. With indifferent looks, Lloyd thoughts that the caterpillar might be for assassinating people that has poison. He also thoughts that she looks pretty useless from the outside. But then again, Podong looked useless too at first. So he decides to ask Bangle whether she can grow bigger with the sunflower seeds, and asks her about her skills as well. While Bangle looks so excited to meet her master. A few weeks later, in the mining site, Lloyd explained that at the front of the tunneling machine, an enlarged Bangle is digging out and eating the dirt, with Bangle's skill called accelerated dirt digestion, and Javier gets ready to receive whatever comes out. Step 2. Bangle launches a steel dung. Step 3. Javier cuts the steel dung into a uniform length. Step 4. The workers create steel segment to support the tunnel. Step 5. Reality check for Javier, as he is a knight, a future sword master, wondering why he is underground slashing at a giant snake's turd, while Lloyd making sure that no step were missed, so no time were wasted, repeatedly pushing the tunnel, making the support further into the mine. Lloyd also didn't forget that he hasn't installed the oxygen pipe. They all would probably be unconscious already. Javier then calls out to Lloyd, telling him to head out for now, as Lloyd also needs to take a break like the other workers. But Lloyd curses at Javier, saying that he is the one in charge, adding that he should be on site at all times. Lloyd then remembers back in his previous life, many bosses just showed off their title and they never even bothered to show up to site, and swore to never do that. Upon scanning deeper towards the mine, Lloyd finally able to see it, the black coal. He then cheers up the workers as they are almost there, and tells them to keep going. Lloyd also not forget to thanks Bangle, because of her they able to do it 10 times faster. He also reminds the worker the principle of the safety first, adding that once they reach the black coal layer, they will dismantle the shield and enlarge the mining space, while at the same time, there are something knocking from the ground. When Lloyd tries to check on it, he sees that there is a hole where he couldn't see before. Suddenly, there's a massive ant comes out from the mine, surprises Lloyd, making him fell down. To be always ready for a fight, Javier slashes the ant, then Lloyd comes swiping in, smashing the ants in the head flat to the ground. It actually scared the shit out of Lloyd, thinking that it wasn't in the book, and he realizes that ant doesn't live alone. They live in colonies, as the other ants readily swarming into the tunnel. As they come, the first thing Lloyd does is evacuates his workers, and with Javier's help, they manage to hold them off, preventing the ants attacking the workers. Lloyd is overwhelmed, thinking how many the ants are, because if the ants manages to go out, the barony will be finished. He thoughts whether Javier is able to hold them off, and it's actually impossible as there are not enough oxygen in the tunnel. Lloyd thinking to destroy the shaft, but without dynamite, the shaft won't collapse. He is so overwhelmed with what he has to do. Then Javier slaps him, telling Lloyd to get a hold of himself and not be consumed by panics. Lloyd then yells at Javier as he is dealing with the ants. Lloyd says that he is thinking up a plan, which Javier tells him to think more quickly because he can't hold on much longer. Lloyd then thinks of something. He decides to face them head on and go towards the ant nest. Javier thoughts that sounds like a ridiculous idea, but decides to trust him anyway. They both run, marching towards the ant colony that get in their way. In the manor, the workers report what had happened in the mine, and Lord Arcos immediately take up his armor and prepares to go to the tunnel, while Javier and Lloyd drive deeper into the nest. At this point, Javier can't hold much longer in a condition where the air is hot but thin, which is still too much for the future swordmaster. So, Lloyd needs to find a methane gas layer quickly as he has not a second to waste. Lloyd explained that there are methane-producing bacteria that live in coal. As a result, there will be pockets of methane gas dotted around. If he is able to find it, he can just blow up the whole colony, not risking them goes out to the village. Then, Lloyd finds it, the methane layer in the mine, as he is going to dig. He asks Javier to cover for him. But what comes next is, the Queen of Ants screams toward the duo, petrified them. Looking at the ginormous ant, Lloyd asks Javier whether he can hold her back, which Javier says that he can't, but Lloyd asks him to tell him after he tries. And Javier simply says that there are things you know even without trying. But, as they have no choice, Javier decides to go for the queen anyway. With the triple circle mana heart he has, Javier prepares to receive the queen's attack, which for now, he is able to do so, while Lloyd keep digging towards the methane gas layer. As Lloyd comes in contact with the gas, he notices the gas is gushing out from the hole he made, so he tells Javier to run towards the exit, while taking the torch with him. and they run towards the exit while the queen chases them. As they ran far enough, Lloyd threw the torch toward the methane gas, telling the ants to feast on the fire. As the fire makes contact with the gas, the fire runs wild, blows up everything around the gas layer. When the explosion about to reach them, Javier covers Lloyd so he doesn't get too badly injured. While outside the mine, Lord Arcos arrives, but when he is about to enter, Sir Bayern holds him off, as the tremor from the explosion can be felt from outside. As the explosions subside, Javier, who covers for Lloyd, is passed out. When Lloyd stands up, he is able to see that his plan has succeeded. Bangle also passed out because of the explosion. As it's not bad enough, the tunnel is blocked from the cave that collapsed, and the system appears saying that Lloyd is running out of oxygen. Using his laser eyes, Lloyd knows that he needs to at least dig for a little more than 15 feet. Because of there is nothing else to do, he starts digging. As Javier wakes up with his last consciousness, he blurry sees that Lloyd is digging and saying that he will get them out of there together, no matter what, as he is responsible for both of Javier and Bangle. As Javier passed out, his approval towards Lloyd increases again, earning him 108 points. With that, Lloyd asks the system to show all of his upgrade-able skills. The system then shows Lloyd that he can upgrade his Asrahan core technique. Smile appears on his face, as he thoughts that even after the duel against Newman, he practiced any chance he got. Whatever he learned how to do, he can now improve that skill. So he uses all of his remaining points upgrading the Asrahan core technique. Now, Lloyd has 2 circle on his heart. With that, he receives more skill, such as he is able to move for 10 minutes without experiencing fatigue, and he can triple his mana amplification for 20 seconds. Then Lloyd uses his skills and starts digging towards the exit. All he wants is just a tiny hole so the oxygen able to come inside the cave, so he keeps digging as his oxygen level rapidly dropping. 3 meters left to go, but Lloyd's oxygen level finally depleted. His skill reached its end and Lloyd fell down. Knowing how Javier and Bangle laying down helplessly, Lloyd uses his skill called Latent Power Surge to dig the rest of the way. But for the last 30 centimeters, his skills ended and all of his means is finally all used. He has no more ways to get them all out. He lays down, thinking that it's way too short, as he wanted to live the nice, sweet life of the son of a country aristocrat. As he thinks of his life ended, Lloyd hears something from the other side. It turns out Podong digs his way out to Lloyd. With a happy face, he delivers the oxygen to gives Lloyd the strength to dig the remaining blockage. As the night comes that day, Lord Arcos walks deeper towards the passage of the ant nest. Lloyd finally able to reach them, as he carries Javier with him. The system notification appears saying that Lloyd were able to overcome his physical limitations in an extreme environment through impressive improvisation. That experience is having a strong effect on his Asrahan core technique. As he fell down, the system rewards him with power saving mode, as in extreme exhaustion. He will use the Asrahan technique, albeit weakly. On the next sunny day, the villagers talks about Lloyd achievements, saying that previously he was troublesome drunkhead, but now Lloyd is a changed man. The villagers heard how he deal with the ant colony accident, and commend him for his bravely and save the worker first before dealing with the ants. Laying at his bed, opening his eyes, Lloyd welcomed by the system again, telling him that all of Baron Frontera's subject were deeply moved by his heroic courage and send their praises. Then rewards Lloyd with 500 RP points. Looking at it, Lloyd smiles, as he is not the least bit concerned with being a hero, but receiving the points is what makes him smile. A few days later, on another sunny day, the work resumes and Lloyd comes into the tunnel with Javier. The workers greet their lords with adores and praises. As of now, the workers think that Lloyd has fought and risked his life for them, which makes him different from regular aristocrats, thinking that Lloyd is the embodiment of noblesse oblige, which makes Lloyd feel uncomfortable instead. Now, after the incident, Lloyd is more concerned of the safety more than ever. He concentrates his time in the mine to find the smallest hazards and resolve them. While searching the ant tunnels, Javier asks Lloyd why is Lloyd doing such dangerous work in person. Because Javier thinks that Lloyd can just tell the workers to do it, which Lloyd ridicule, saying that the greater the risk, the more reason the man in charge should be on the front line. Then adding, that way, no one can say anything when Lloyd get the most money. Now, Javier is having a hard time deciding whether Lloyd is bad or good person, and the system tells Lloyd that Javier's approval rating is about to rise but didn't. As they reach the end of the tunnel, using the laser eyes, Lloyd looks behind the wall, and he finds something behind it, so he starts digging. And it's true, Lloyd finds a cave behind the wall. What inside is the ants' food, and there is an orc tied up. As Javier tries to draw his sword, intending to take care of the orc, Lloyd prevents him, saying that it's pretty reckless to just kill him. Looking at the orc, Lloyd thoughts he finds a jackpot, a new item he can play with, and decides to save him. The next day, the orc able to recover and thanks Lloyd for helping him. It revealed that the orc's name is Arash. He is the son of the orc tribe chief. He recovered in no time thanks to the Baron's physician. Arash tells Lloyd that he is the son of the Sand and Steel tribe chief does not forget acts of kindness, and he asks what Lloyd wants and it shall be given to him. That is exactly the reason that Lloyd saved the orc, and he asks for 120 orcs to work in the mine. Arash says that impossible, and Lloyd clicked his tongue, making Arash comments that he looks like a bad man. Arash then explained that orcs are all warriors, and warriors only follow a warrior's order. Lloyd is not a warrior. Even if Arash gives him orcs, Lloyd will likely unable to give them orders. Lloyd then remembers that in the book, orcs in the wild must bring the head of a wild ant for their coming-of-age ceremony. He thinks that Arash must have accidentally went too far into the ant cave and got paralyzed. It gives him an idea, saying that there's nothing he can do, and congratulates Arash on completing his coming-of-age ceremony. Making Arash depressed, he says that he didn't even catch a wild ant and got paralyzed. It was a failure. Lloyd plays dumb asking what Arash is talking about, saying that they have both caught the queen together while pointing at the head of the queen ant. Lloyd then manipulates him further, saying that it was such an unbelievable sight, adding that when he entered the ant nest, the queen ant was like a pile of rags, quivering. And thanks to Arash, Lloyd claims able to easily strike down the weakened the queen ant. So, he says that wild ant was caught by both of them, Arash the great warrior and Lloyd. Then Lloyd asks again about the 120 worker orcs, which Arash ecstatically says that Lloyd shall have them. A week later in the territory of Sand and Steel tribe of wild orcs, they arrive and Arkosh greeted by his father. And when they hugged, they made a wind blast that has enormous power. As if Lloyd caught between them, he would be turned to smithereens, and he wickedly grinning, thinking that if he gets 120 workers like that, the productivity would increase by hundreds of times. Arkosh then presents the head of the queen ant, which makes the tribe cheers in the achievement, and they celebrate by doing workouts. Lloyd then realized that the orcs use gold treasure as their workout equipment. In the tribe hall, Lloyd met with the chief's refusal of the request of the 120 worker orcs. Beat up from the journey, Lloyd is surprised to see them change their mind again. So he asked Akash, the great chief of the Sand and Steel tribe, the reason for their refusal. Akash explained that their tribe eat a lot of meat to build up their muscles, so they hunt every day in 3 shifts, adding that if they don't they will experience muscle loss. He explained further that muscle loss would mean the end of their tribe, as they cannot reduce the number of warriors on the hunt. Lloyd asks why they need to hunt every single day, and Akash says that the meat spoils after 1 day, so if they eat the spoiled meat, they will experience muscle loss. Lloyd then offers them a method to store meat, making them able to last for days without spoiling. Only then the chief will able to lend the 120 worker orcs. So, that's how Lloyd made a contract with the tribe chief to get the worker orcs and their treasure. The contractor will build a storage unit and they will receive the fitness tools as payment. However, the orcs' wants fitness equipment made of stone will be provided in their place. Javier is being suspicious again at Lloyd for knowing such a thing, so Lloyd keeps explaining while also changing the topics in rapid pace. Lloyd then explained that to build the storage unit, they need the rock he pointed at. He explained that it's called granite and it's extremely strong. Javier thoughts that the stone wouldn't come loose very easily and Lloyd thinks for a moment. Lloyd thoughts that there's no dynamite there, but they do have something else instead. He looks towards Javier and thoughts of him as a human dynamite, which makes Javier nervous. Lloyd explained the chapter in the books where the city of Namaran, trapped within a powerful evil magic force field. Inside the city were thousands of refugees that Javier needed to save. By then, Javier had already attained Sword Master status and could form up to 4 mana circles. But even he could do nothing but helplessly watch the refugees have their mana sucked out of them. And without even realizing, he created his lethal skill. 1 mana circle to protect the main mana heart, and the remaining 3 circles are smashed together to create a mana blast, destroying the wall that trapped the refugees. From then on, that mana blast would become one of the Knight of Blood and Iron's signature moves, along with the Asrahan core technique. Lloyd then tells Javier about the idea of the technique, asking him whether he can do something like that. Javier tells Lloyd to tell him how does he know about things like that, which Lloyd just brushes out, saying that the thought just came to him, asking whether his eyes look like the eyes of liars. Anyway, he tells Javier to just try it, as it would be cool if Javier's swordsmanship evolved. Javier knows that Lloyd asks him to do it just because Lloyd wants something out of him. But then, if it really possible, it would be good for Javier as well, so he do as he told. He prepares himself, one circle to protect the mana heart, and the remaining two are mobilized. Releasing the two circle, the blade exploded, even Lloyd able to fell the explosion. But, as it is the first time Javier does it, he explodes himself as well, messing up his clothes and hair. Javier asks Lloyd whether he anticipates that kind of outcome. That Lloyd claims that he doesn't and he apologizes for it. Javier then says that regardless, Lloyd thinking proved to be correct this time as well, so it's time for him to do some work from Lloyd. The system appears, telling Lloyd that Javier is grateful for teaching him. His approval rating increased by 3 and now, Javier's approval rating is -11. While Javier is nagging that he is a knight, he trained with his sword to protect his master, not to use it for construction. Which Lloyd laughs it off, saying that Javier don't need to thank him as he already gives him RP point anyway. After that, the construction went at a lightning pace. Javier sliced up blocks of granite while Padang transported them. Even the orcs took up the job on their own, like some gym addicts without being asked. Lloyd thoughts that they will finish 5 times faster than planned. But the next problem is he has to find ice block and some insulation. He then asks Javier about the 5 men he sent out to fetch the insulation, as it has been 3 weeks, and Lloyd suspects that something had happened to them, so he asks Javier to join him looking for them. But Javier tries to find them on his own, as he is afraid that misfortune has befallen them, and he can't let the heir to the estate risk his life. But Lloyd tells him again that he is the man in charge, he is responsible for all of his worker. With nothing else to say, they both depart to look for the missing man. Somewhere in the barren land, Lloyd found the sign of the missing man. He notices that it was the special glove he made for his man, and he also notices the straw that he needs for the insulation. Javier calls out to Lloyd telling him to see a part of the canyon. He feels as the flow of mana seems unnatural. He adds that it is faint, so he is not sure. Lloyd then tries to remember an episode of the story from the book, then Lloyd looks panicked. He tells Javier to hurry, adding that their man might already dead. They then find more sign of the missing men, and finally they arrive at a cave that Lloyd recognizes, the Lupelin's dungeon. Lloyd explained that in the book, Javier goes to the dungeon early, and it was the secret hideout of the dark sorcerer named Lupelin. Lloyd then gets so mad, thinking how dares Lupelin lay a hand on his property, and that is a violation on his property rights, adding that even death penalty would be generous. But then, Javier suddenly went inside telling Lloyd to follow behind him. As Lloyd tells him to wait, Javier steps on a trap spell, which almost hurt him badly because of Lloyd able to grab him off out the way. Lloyd then mocks Javier, asking whether he is really a knight and how can he not think there might be traps like that around. Lloyd then explained that in the book, Javier gets caught on the first trap, and he enters the dungeon covered in wounds. But Javier doesn't get caught again, and that is because he knows the flow of mana in that place is a bit off. So Lloyd tells him to focus and more in tune with that feeling, so Javier do as he says. Javier then realized that where a booby trap planted, there will be an unnatural cluster of mana. Only then he is able to lead the way. As he walks deeper into the cave, Javier thoughts how Lloyd always avoids a straight answer with lies, but there's no doubt that Lloyd knows exactly what's happening right now and what will happen in the future. But Javier fails to find out how Lloyd able to do it, as he feels no significant mana or special energy from Lloyd. So he decides to focus on the task at hand, as they must rescue those soldiers. Inside the dungeon, Lupelin notices his bobby trap is triggered, and he actually don't mind it, assuming the intruders are dead. He then finishes his preparation, proceeding to open the door to the room he detained the soldiers, hoping that this time he succeed in his spell. He takes one of the soldier, grabbing him and throws him into a kind of spell written in the floor. As he grab his scythe, saying that a pentacle connected to the underworld, a sickle soaked in blood for 100 days, a young man, and his preparation is perfect. As he tries to swing his scythe, Lloyd and Javier comes into the dungeon. Lloyd comes in shouting to Lupelin not to touch his stuff and threaten him. Lupelin then casts his spell, triggering the door to close on them. But Lloyd knows, and he starts to stop his breath. Inside, Lupelin thoughts that it's sleeping gas that could knock out an elephant, as he is also happy he will have 2 more person for the sacrifice. Lloyd uses Energizer. For 10 minutes he don't need to take a breath, then starts digging below the gate that blocking the dungeon. As he digs, he thoughts that since Javier has tried every insomnia remedy available, he is immune to all form of sleeping medication. While Javier thoughts how ridiculous Lloyd is digging like a mole, and he thinks that he should mock him about that later. And Lloyd tells him to blast the rest of the way to the dungeon, and with mana blast they open up a way to the dungeon room, surprising Lupelin. Lloyd obnoxiously comes out from the hole, saying that he bet Lupelin has never seen an entrance like that. Being surprised, Lupulin then casting his magic into the ground, summoning a ghoul that according to him, because he keeps failing his reincarnation spells, he created an extremely strong ghoul as a byproduct. He assumes that there's no way Lloyd and Javier will get even a single scratch on its steely skin. Lloyd then tells Javier that that one is going to be pretty tough, and its weakness is its leg. But before Lloyd can finishes, Javier already jumps up in the air. He uses the Mana Blast to create another attack called Mana Blast Slash, which split the ghoul in two, surprises Lupulin, making him unable to make another move. That attack also surprises Lloyd though, because Javier uses Mana Blast to cut the ghoul in half, which wasn't mentioned in the book. But Lloyd brushes it off. He goes to Lupulin, who looks really scared to death, thinking that Lloyd and Javier will kill him and there's no way Lupulin can beat them. Being mad at him, Lloyd says that Lupulin set his construction back by weeks because Lupulin abducted his men. He then asks how are Lupulin going to make up for that. Then Lupulin can only apologize for that, thinking that he need to get out of that situation alive no matter what. But Lloyd doesn't care a bit about Lupulin's apologies, he just wants to be paid. Which Lupulin says that his cave is full of valuable tools for sorcery, and he will give Lloyd everything. There is again. Lloyd smiles maliciously, making sure whether everything in the cave belonged to him, which Lupulin says that it is. In the meantime, Javier checks on the soldiers and he confirmed that all of the men are worn out, but seems fine otherwise. So Lloyd asks Lupulin about it. A few days more and the men would have starved to death. What was Lupulin planning to do with them? Which Lupulin says that he is researching how to bring back the dead. So Lloyd scolds him, saying that it is impossible. He also asks what would Lupulin do if he could. It turns out that Lupulin plans to bring back his dead wife and child. He explained that he worked as a sorcerer in his lord's castle, and him and his family lived an ordinary life. He even able to recall it as a happy life. But the lord he was serving, that fiend, tried to steal his wife from him, so Lupulin planned to run away with his family. Lloyd stops his story. Mox then scolds him, asking what was he thinking trying to bring back his family. Was he expecting his wife and child to thank him for killing hundreds of innocent people to bring them back? Lupulin tries to retaliate, but Lloyd keeps scolding him, adding that to make the ghoul he has to sacrifice a lot of people. No matter how he spin it, it won't change who Lupulin really are, because he had utterly crushed the happiness of others, people who were just like himself, and he is a serial murderer. In the end, Lloyd says that he will come back with his men to pick the tools in the cave. While turning away, he reminds Lupulin that if he dares to hurt anyone again, there will be no mercy for him, which makes Lupulin feel grateful for being pardoned from his sins. Lloyd remembers that in the novel, Javer did the same as what Lloyd did. He forces Lupulin out of his laboratory, and then instead of turning his life back around, Lupulin goes on to kill hundreds more and alters his own body. He becomes an annoying villain that Javier fights over and over again. And the reason Lloyd walking away from Lupulin while knowing all of that is because he knows well that Lupulin will try to attack him from the start. And he does. Lloyd looks at him with a death stare, adding that no mercy for him now. Then Javier swiftly beheaded him, ending the problem that might arise in the future, as Lloyd thought that villains deserve a punishment befitting a villain. Outside, Lloyd lead the party to go back to the tribe delivering the straw. Noticing the men having a hard time, Lloyd asks him to pass the bag to him. When the men tries to refuse, Lloyd says that if the men passed out, he has to carry both of his bag and him, and immediately asking them to pass the bag. In the end, the men keep pestering him, saying that how can they make their lord carry their bag, making Lloyd angry. So he tells them that if he hears another word, no one is getting a bonus, and also tell them to go. What Lloyd did had touches the men's hearts, while Javier thinks that he can't tell if Lloyd doesn't want there to be more weight to carry or he is actually worried about his men. But to those men, it doesn't really matter anyway, because for them, their master, Lloyd, is a leader they can trust and follow. The system appears telling him that the rescued soldier have been deeply moved by Lloyd's actions, through their words. That moving episode will soon spread far and wide, adding that it is a rewarding experience for Lloyd. But as always, Lloyd wasn't interested in anything other than money for the rewards. Arriving at the tribe, Lloyd shows Arkosh the finished storage room. Arkosh thinks that it is only a little bit colder than outside, so the meat will spoil in the end, and that will lead to muscle loss. Which Lloyd explained that because they don't have ice yet, adding that the place isn't finished yet. Arkosh knows what the ice is. He says that there is no ice in that hot wasteland. So, Lloyd has to tell him that if they don't have any ice, they can just make some. Arkosh is not as stupid as Lloyd thinks. He is suspicious that he might bring a conman to the tribe. He also questioned the story about the Ant Queen might be a lie too. In the end, Arkosh tries to trust Lloyd, thinking that Lloyd saved him, so he can't think of him as a bad person. So he decides to leave Lloyd and Javier for the time being, adding that if they need anything they can just call out to him. When Arkosh left, Javier asks Lloyd how does he plan to make the ice blocks. Lloyd nervously turns around at Javier, saying that it is a good question as he has no idea yet. And now, Javier realizes that Lloyd really doesn't have a plan and getting mad at Lloyd. He adds that how can Lloyd made a contract with them without a plan for how to do it. Lloyd then asks Javier about what unsuccessful people have in common. He explained that because of they think they can't do this or that, they find a million reasons not to do something without even trying. But the people who succeed start things and figure them out somehow, adding that is innovation, and that is the mind of entrepreneur. But Javier simply doesn't believe it. He thinks that not a chance, because those people are 1,000 times more likely to fail than succeed. At night that day, Lloyd spends his time thinking about it. He plans on firstly making a giant ice cube mold. Then once Padong and Bangle get the water from the lake to fill the mold, he is ready to go. Lloyd knows that in this world has ice magic. He wonders how does it works. He then thinks that he definitely felt it. Every day while he trained in absorbing mana, there are different types of mana in the natural world, all with different properties. So he take a certain mana to change it in certain way, and that's how he cast magic. Of course, as of right now, he has no idea how to wield mana at will, but he has an idea that he can do something similar. So the next day, he proceed with the plan, making the mold for the ice cube and fill it with water. Using the Asrahan core technique, he tries to absorb the mana in the water. But Lloyd will only absorb the warm mana and leaves behind the cold mana. Looking at how Lloyd tries it, Javier thought that his method is irresponsible and reckless. But now, he knows that Lloyd is figuring out a way as if he is showing off to him. The system appears telling Lloyd that he has developed a new application for the Asrahan core technique. And a few days later, he succeeded in making the ice cubes, and all he need now is the insulation to finish the building of the storage room. He also not forget to look at Javier, saying that of a mind of an entrepreneur, while Javier not in defeat. The day that the storage room is finished, Lloyd and 120 orcs prepared to go back to Frontera. Akash sends the party and says his parting words that they are grateful and make a vow to Lloyd. He adds that from that moment, he declares the family of Lloyd Frontera and the Sand and Steel tribe is blood brothers. While all of the orcs pose and display their muscle, Akash says that the Fronteras are their friend and an enemy of Fronteras is an enemy of their tribe. If anyone should cause Lloyd trouble, they will be at his side. The system appears, inform Lloyd that the orc tribe has accepted him as a true friend and giving Lloyd a 100 RP bonus. That makes him fire up, then gives his own regards as well, saying long live the Sand and Steel tribe. When they arrived back at the town after the long and arduous journey, the townspeople were understandably frightened. Lloyd comes with 120 frighteningly muscly orcs entering the town. He thinks that he should issue an announcement to try and quell their fears, but it's too late now. Even the Baron and Baroness, who knew why Lloyd went to see the orc tribe, was frozen in fear when they see the orcs in person. And then there was the unexpected bonus. The story of Lloyd defeating the Dark Sorcerer and rescuing the soldier is spreading throughout the land. The people are praising Lloyd's valiance and courage. Forget the praise, Lloyd only cares about the 300 RP points he receives from it. The Baron then informed Lloyd that he finds some wealthy merchants for the orcs' exercise equipment, and all they have left to deal with is the Dark Sorcerer's tools. So Lloyd checks the content of the Lupelin's cave, where he finds something. Then he hurriedly tells Javier to tidy up the place as he will go to the mine. He ran to the mine calling up to Tords, and when he finds him, Lloyd reminds Tords about the terms of the contract where Tords need to work for 520 years. If he thinks about it, that was ridiculous and that clause was a bit of a joke. But now, he explained that Tords don't have to worry anymore. Lloyd shows that there is a spell that can turn a corpse into a ghoul he can control, and that means Tords can work the whole 520 years. Lloyd truly feel excited about it while Tords looks so defeated. Lloyd then asks him whether he is the only one excited about it, then tells Tords to smile. And so he does as he told. Tords smile while crying his heart out. Lloyd then went away telling Tords to keep up the good work, while the system appears telling Lloyd that the ruler of the underworld is impressed by him and would like to offer him a position. Going back to the castle, Lloyd has something he need to discuss with the Baron. As he is going to enter the Baron's office, the maid tells him that the Baron is in the reception room. He has the Lone Lenders visit him today, which makes Lloyd ecstatically laugh knowing the two-person had come and scheming something for them. Then he knocks into the reception room, entering the room and greets the two people inside. This time, the two Lone Lenders brag that they have an official invitation to visit so Lloyd wouldn't be able to threaten them again. He says that he couldn't help but overhears the amazing offer they are giving the Fronteras, so he wants to suggest his own offer to the loan lenders. He adds that going forwards, the Fronteras will repay their debts in smaller tranches, asking the loan lenders to lower the interest accordingly, which of course the loan lender refuse. So Lloyd refutes that they can spit out crappy offers, but he can't, adding that makes him angry. While Arkosh comes in behind Lloyd saying that who dares to anger his Frontera brother, scaring the loan lenders. Arkosh adds that anyone who caused trouble for the Fronteras will be destroyed with the full force of the Sand and Steel tribe. Then Lloyd chip in, saying that the loan lenders just has a loud voice, not angering him a bit. He then asks the loan lenders again about his offers, saying that if they refuses the offer they might hurt his feelings. While Arkosh says that if they hurt Frontera's feeling, he will tear them to pieces. If Lloyd has things his way, he would cancel the debt completely, but that would be a crime. So they have to make do with that change while the loan lenders hurriedly ran away from the castle. Lloyd then speaks to the Baron. He says that the Ondal construction business is gradually expanding, and the mining of soft coal is going smoothly. They will be able to pay off the debts in no time, and gives the contract to the Baron. He adds that they now do have one big problem, and if they don't solve that, it will be serious. He says that the orcs eat 10 times more than a normal human. The cost of feeding them is huge, so if that continues they may gain more debt. However, just as Lloyd thoughts, the orcs are the best miners. He receives a report that an orc has been working for 24 hours non-stop. So he commands his men to get him out of there. The orc tries to refuse, feeling afraid of muscle loss. With their unbelievable fitness and an insatiable thirst for a workout, productivity has increased by more than 10-fold. Even they refuses to be paid. However, they asks to be fed until their belly's full. That's the reason why Lloyd needs a lot more money, and the Baron might need to increase tax revenues exponentially. But they can't simply ask the villagers to pay more tax, so Lloyd proposed to make the people make lots more money. He suggests the Baron to transform the Merit's wetlands into farmland, and then they will give that land to the people. But it's easier than done though, as the land has been abandoned for hundreds of years. Lloyd has made a model for it, and a terrain that big will have a lot of variable. He need to build something so that it can drain the water even when it rains. Day after day, Lloyd keeps making the model to be able to enabled in the real world. On the 21st day, the Baron visit him with Javier. He informed the Baron that Lloyd has not been resting or eating properly, so he asks whether he should stop him. But the Baron tells Javier that he shouldn't. He explained that although he is Lloyd's father, he uses to hate Lloyd. He wondered when Lloyd would ever become a man, if it was even possible. But now, as if by a miracle, Lloyd is a different man and working to help the land. The Baron may not be able to help him, but he don't want to be an obstacle for Lloyd. Javier then tells the Baron that it is a wise decision. He explains that the current Lloyd is the type of person to never give up until he keeps his word. That's when the system appears telling Lloyd that Baron Frontera's approval rating has increased again. But he doesn't care about it for now, as he is too immersed in his model, where he has finally succeeded, and able to make the water drain properly. And what he thinks about is the tax money will flow in like that water's draining, and will shower him in sweet golden money. As he fell down, Lloyd thought that took a lot of work. But it wasn't that bad, especially compared to staying up all night doing part-time construction work. Another notification appears, telling him that his efforts had a major impact on the special skill, and unlocked a new skill for Lloyd on the design skill, option 3, simulation mode, where he can simulate 3D model from the data he obtained from surveying the land. He is mad toward the system, asking why she only tells him now where he need to work his butt off for an entire month. The system explained that only knowledge he has acquired himself are enhanced with skills. That is all because of his wish. Then, instead of fighting with the system, he calls out to Podong and Bangle, asking them whether they are ready to make new friends. So, the first stage of the Merit's Wetlands Reclamation Project. He needs Podong and Bangle to get rid of all the water from the wetlands. But Podong explained that that's too big of a job for just the two of them, so that's why Lloyd will get them a new friend. He then summons another creature, and instead of falling face down, he bumps around punching Lloyd in the face. What comes out is a small hippopotamus, where he is happily welcomed by Podong and Bangle. Lloyd then asks him to spit out the instruction manual where it says that he doesn't get bigger with sunflower seeds, making Lloyd thinks that he really did get a dud this time. So he bring up the summoning window again, saying what a complete waste that he summons a dud, and making Hamang sad, so Bangle scolds Lloyd for being mean. Lloyd explained that they need someone bigger for their next project, while Hameng is so small making him useless. So both Podong and Bangle striking protest, and Lloyd ends up asking what Hammond's skill is. Hameng then explained that he can chug water as much as his stomach can hold. Then Lloyd asks him to show what he can do, and Hameng starts to chug the water on the wetland. Looking at him, Lloyd is surprised to see that Hameng is growing bigger as he chugs waters into his stomach, even as big as Podong as he eats sunflower seed. Learning at how Hameng can suck the water dry, he calculates that they can get rid of all that water in a few days. And the two of Podong and Bangle look so smug and proud that Hameng is that powerful. Lloyd then calls out to the system. Whether was that really random, as he always seemed to get the exact skill he needs. The system then explained that usually when one get into another world, one has some sort of a special skill. And since Lloyd is a human with no skill or luck and just a whole bunch of handicaps, that is probably why Lloyd get lucky in the random summon. A little bit later, Hameng asks Lloyd whether he can drink some more, which Lloyd tells him to drink to his heart's content, because tomorrow they will start reclaiming the Merit's wetlands. Lloyd then explained for the project, they will begin with the vertical drainage system. First, Hameng removes all the water from the wetlands. He spits out the water he drank into the river. He gets smaller, then does it all over again. Then they remove any weeds or debris from the exposed ground. They make holes all over the ground with Mana Blast and put in some bamboo stalks. They fill the area with sand to make a sand bank while Podong packs down the earth. To get water out of the deepest parts of the soil, they use bamboo stalks like straw and have Hameng one-shot it all. After that, they build a levee using Lloyd upgraded simulation skill. Then after 10 days of that, they completed a sector. Cheering up the workers, he says that they have a lot of work left to go in, but what happens when they are done is the bonus party. Javier looks at how the wetlands turning into a farmland. He wonder when did he starts being drafted in like that, seemingly natural for him to farm. Lloyd then gives him a bag of seeds and asks him to plant them all in the specific area he points at. Javier tries to refuses, saying that he is a knight, but Lloyd just tell him to go. Lloyd says that it's to get rid of the pests, begging him to do it. And so Javier does it. He plants the seeds and water them. From behind come the Baron and Baroness, saying that Lloyd is really turning that wetlands into farmland. Not only he, the Baron, but the people of that area must be thinking the same thing. That is simply a miracle. So, everyone in the Frontera barony feels deep awe and respect for the miracle Lloyd performed. For that great achievement, Lloyd has been awarded a large amount of point, which is 450 RP points. Lloyd is walking around the farmland he reclaimed, while Javier enjoying his sweet time watering the crop that he plants. Lloyd says that all they need now is to build a water wheel and they will really be done with the farmland. Javier asks about the water wheel, and Lloyd explained that it's something to remove the water when the rains come. Otherwise the land they had reclaimed will be underwater. Suddenly, there's a group of people coming towards them. It turns out it's Viscount Lacona from north of the Merit's wetlands. The Viscount's representative asks about who is in charge of the reclaiming project. Javier tries to warn him to show respect toward the Baron's son, but Lloyd stops him. He then answers the representative that he is the one in charge of the project. The representative asks why they are in the land that belonged to the Viscount Lacona and tells them to leave the place immediately. It turns out that for hundreds of years, people haven't stepped foot on Merit's wasteland. But for administrative purpose, the northern parts belongs to Viscount Lacona, and the southern parts belong to Baron Frontera. It's obvious that Viscount Lacona waited until the land was reclaimed to show up and assert his ownership. He is trying to grab a hold of that rich and fertile land without putting in any effort of his own. And all of this time, Lloyd knows it well that the northern part is indeed belong to Viscount Lacona. He tries to confirm with them that they are trespassing on Viscount Lacona's land, which the representative answers saying that they are. But Lloyd just crudely telling him to back off, as he is the noble man, and tells the lowlife of the representative to shut up. It surprises him and all the people around though, but as it doesn't even happen, Lloyd greets Viscount Lacona, introducing himself as the eldest son of Baron Frontera. But Viscount Lacona seems doesn't regard Lloyd that much. He asks Lloyd to bring his father instead. But while Viscount Lacona is talking, Lloyd deliberately just ignore him, which makes the Viscount agitated, saying whether Lloyd can hear him or not, and asking again to bring Lord Arcos over, which Lloyd says that he does hear it quite well, nonchalantly saying that it sounded like the buzzing of some pesky fly. Lacona is totally oblivious about it and start looking for the fly, and the representative explained that Lloyd was insulting the Viscount, surprising him. Lloyd then reads the Kingdom Law, where the special exemption regarding development of barren land explained. Lacona tries to stop Lloyd, but he keep reading it, adding that the aim of the law regards the development of long-standing barren land, and the establishment of ownership of the reclaimed land. and any land that meets the requirements in the law will be recognized as belonging to the developer of the barren land. The last requirement for Lloyd to claim ownership on the land is to harvest the crop specified in the law, and so he uproots the plants that Javier grows. It surprises both the Javier and the Viscount's party. Now Javier knows why Lloyd asks him to grow the seeds in specific spot and to take over them. To rub salt in the wounds, Lloyd congratulates Lacona for witnessing the historic first ever harvest of the Merit's wetlands. Lacona is so shocked to learn how quick-witted Lloyd is, he wonders whether Lloyd has planned all of that ahead of time. In the end, Lloyd gives him the crop, and not only that, he kicks the Viscount party out of his new reclaimed land, pissing Viscount Lacona off. After that, Javier asks Lloyd whether he heard prophecy from somewhere or something that the Viscount party were coming, which Lloyd explained that it is not his first time dealing with that type of person, leeches trying to steal someone else's hard work. The workers cheering Lloyd up, saying how Lloyd has saved their land. But it makes him mad instead. That's just how petty Lloyd is, saying that he wasn't paying them to cheer for him, and orders them to get back to work. With summer over, fall came and brought heavy rain. Lloyd has run hundreds of simulation, but there's no room for complacency. He need to stay and make sure until the end, to see if Merit's wetlands can really be of use for Frontera. When the sun arises, it marks his success, giving him monumental achievement in construction. Lloyd has left indelible mark in the history of civil engineering on the Laurasia continent. As a reward, Lloyd received a large amount of skill experience, and that is the time for him to move on to the next stage. Meanwhile, in the Lacona castle, the Viscount received the news that Frontera will have reclaimed land migration incentives, which they will give away the land for free with full protection for 3 years, but in return they must live there for 5 years, and migration is being restricted, which mean the residents will spend the last 2 years furiously cultivating the land. They will be the owners of the land, and the Merit's wetlands will become the golden goose laying golden eggs, making Lacona so hurt from the jealousy as half of the land was his. The next thing he does is to scheme something for it, so he calls out to his subject. A few days later in the Frontera barony, Lloyd wakes up with a severe headache. He wonders whether all of the long days have finally caught up with him or something, yet he can't just roll around in his bed. He need to organize the sections and the distribution allotments. When he calls out to Javier, he notices that Javier also doesn't seem to look fine either though. As a master swordsman, Javier should have been immune to diseases, let alone a quite severe headache. That's when Lloyd suspects something. Upon checking the whole village, it turns out that the villagers also claiming to have a severe headache. A farm boy in the village informs Lloyd that the cows have stopped drinking water since yesterday, which will kill them if they get dehydrated. Now, Lloyd knows that it's affecting everyone in the barony, and the water is the cause of that. One of the strongest weapons he has is his knowledge of the world. But after the wild ant incident, he realized there are things that don't appear in the novel. He expected Viscount Lacona to want the Merit's wetlands back, so Lloyd did some research into those guys and found out something. The Lacona region's main source of income is their mysterious dyeing technology, and Ladona berry that they use for their dye. That's when Lloyd realizes that it's all Lacona's doing. Meanwhile, at the castle, Baron Arco's getting blackmailed by the Viscount's representative. He said that the Viscount wants half of the reclaimed Merit's wetlands, and after that only they will stop dumping their dye wastewater. Baron Arco's then threatened to bring the matter to the king, but the representative tells him to go on. As likely the barony will win, but it will take at least 2 years before a verdict. With all of the legal fees and paying drinking water, the barony likely wouldn't be able to hold on. The representative then says that they will wait for the Baron's decision as he stands up to go back. Lord Arcos is mad because Lloyd and his people put in their blood and sweat into the land, so he will not give the Viscount a single inch of it. But the representative ignore it and bow down to excuse himself, only to get smashed by the door when Lloyd open it. Well, he now has double circle mana heart, so it wouldn't be hard for him to smash a person. He deliberately ignores the representative and reports to his father. Lloyd says that it appears their parasitic neighbors have been tampering with their river water, so he would like to discuss countermeasures. Then the representative stands up, shouts out how dare Lloyd insult his master, which Lloyd nonchalantly says that he didn't know parasite scum could understand human, insulting him further. The representative is so mad that Lloyd dares to insult his honor twice. He challenges Lloyd to a duel in the name of Kernot. Well, the representative obviously get whacked around by Lloyd and he cries like a baby. He asks Lloyd to stop hitting him as he is yielding the duel. So, Lloyd stops hitting him, adding that he is satisfied with it. But he whacks him some more as the representative threatened the Baron with disrespect. While on the stand, Lord Arcos tells Lloyd to stop as the duel is over, but having an excited face watching the representative get whacked repeatedly, and Javier claims to have never seen the Lord like that. Back in the Viscounty, he reported to Lacona. He is mad as he instruct his representative to just blackmail them, yet he get back beaten up. But it actually good for them, as of now the barony will have no way other than take the Viscounty to court. With that, they can frame it as an assault by a reckless aristocrat and add 3 or 4 years to the whole process. That's probably what the Viscount is thinking, Lloyd claims, but the Frontera barony will never do something so wasteful. And Lloyd commands the soldiers and orcs to blow them out of the water by their own means as they work the land with their blood, sweat, and tears, asking them to protect it from the evil of greed, and the people cheer up with him. Firstly, they solve the drinking water problem by building a reservoir. Then Hamming will bring the water from a location upstream before it becomes polluted. Javier is worried that nor Hamming and Lloyd will be able to rest for even a day. But Lloyd has something planned. He will construct a water supply system, an infrastructure to bring in water from Lake Capua in the eastern mountains. Javier knows that the distance is enormous, and the labor involved itself would be huge. But Lloyd schemes a bigger thing as well. He will take a 100 times profit from it. A few months later, in the Viscounty, Lacona is anxious about the progressing matter. That's when his vassal inform him that the Baron Frontera's son, Lloyd, is requesting an audience with him, which the Viscount tell him to get lost. He informs Lacona further that Lloyd wants to help Lacona with some problems he may be having. So Lloyd comes into the Viscount's office. He sat down rudely saying how well Viscount Lacona is. In the end, Lacona asks him what does he wants, which Lloyd repeatedly being rude, saying that he can help Lacona's problem. He adds that he could help Lacona save the crumbling dye workshop of his. Now it revealed to Lacona that the one ruining his workshop is Lloyd. Lloyd expresses how in truth it was quite undertaking. Thanks to the wastewater Lacona's dumped into Frontera's water supply, they had to bring in water all the way from Lake Capua. But of course, in the beginning they had no idea that Lacona was dumping wastewater. It was the lovely representative who was so kind enough to tell them that Lacona dumping it intentionally. Anyway, Lloyd dug out a path from the lake to his land, laid down the pipes, buried them, went through all sorts of trouble along the way. But Lacona has enough of it. He asks again what Lloyd did to the workshop. Then Lloyd continues his story while telling him to be patient. So, they are an enormous valley in the middle of their route, and the only thing they could do is to erect a Roman-style aqueduct. But in order to do so, they used building material in the valley, and some of the limestone accidentally ended up covering the bottom of the valley's floor. They ended up exposing all of that limestone bedrock as well, which the water from that valley flows down to Lacona's workshop. It's all that lime in the water that's dyed all of his clothes to crap. That makes Lacona shouts at them, saying does Lloyd now know the law of the kingdom, and threaten him at the royal court, which Lloyd beg him to do so, adding that it will take at least 2 years before a verdict is reached. He give back the favor, saying that will there be anyone left by then who remembers Lacona's good. Lacona, left in shocks and panic, can only inwardly thinking how the table had turned on him. Lloyd then asking himself to leave, as he already satisfied Lacona queries around his problem. Lacona shouts at him again, saying that Lloyd messed with the wrong man. He boasts how many people he know at the royal court, and threatened Lloyd to make him pay for his damage many times over, which Lloyd just ignores and goes out. On the way back home, Javier is worried on why Lloyd just provoked and infuriates Viscount Lacona. He confirmed that Lacona really does connection in the capital. But Lloyd assures Javier that he knows that, and tells him to just wait and see who has more to lose. A month later in the Frontera residence, Lacona bows down in front of Lloyd, apologizes to him that he was wrong, and asks him to save his dye workshop. Lloyd asks does his well connection in the capital tell him that he couldn't win the case, which of course Lacona already lost when his man admitted to intentional misbehavior. And Lacona knows now that he is done, so he keep apologizing. He asks Lloyd to look at him, a Viscount, laying down his pride and begging him. But Lloyd doesn't need apologies. Instead, with a warm smile he gives him a water supply contract, adding that if Lacona sign it, Lloyd can start supplying water to Lacona's workshop within a week. Which Lacona refutes, saying how can someone can put a price on water, let alone an extremely high one. So Lloyd gives him a death stare, explaining that the one who taught him that water is not free is Lacona himself. On the evening that day, Lloyd reports the contract to Lord Arcos. He can't believe that they really will getting such a large sum every month. Lloyd assures him that the Viscount signed it himself, and with that money, the Fronteras will be able to pay back all of their debt with some spare money left. Javier thoughts that the Viscount definitely started the fight, and Lloyd brought good results for the people and the Lord. But now, Lloyd almost seems like the devil, because the contract did not specify an end date, which means he will be sucking the Viscount dry until the day he dies. Even long after he is dead, they will be sucking that bloodline dry for generation. Inwardly, Lloyd thoughts on how he can let Lacona get away with just a slap on the wrist. If he could exchange his blood vessels for money, he would rip it all right out of him. Lord Arcos feels afraid that Lloyd making such a face, and he explained that he is just so happy about the contract. Then, Lord Arcos inform him about the treasure from the orcs. It turns out that Count Cremo sends words that he will purchase it for a handsome price. Lord Arcos explained that even though Lord Cremo can easily purchase pieces like that, but Lord Cremo wants to construct a statue. A little peek on the city of commerce, Lord Cremo watch over his city from his castle. He notices that something massive comes out from the depth of the sea. It's a Giga-Titan that looks like a lobster appears in front of the city. And back to the Frontera County. Javier report to Lord Arcos that they will be leaving in a week and the waterworks in Lacona would be finished around then. Lord Arcos says if that's what Lloyd wants, then he will let him be. Javier tells him not to worry. He will monitor his master Lloyd closely. Then Lord Arcos explained that when the knight from Viscount came to blackmail him into giving them half of the reclaimed Merritt's wetlands, in the past, he would have been terrified and simply handed it over to them. But after watching Lloyd and the people's efforts, Lord Arcos found some courage of his own. While he has been an indecisive and incompetent lord, Javier remembers that in his mind, Lord Arcos has always been the kindest and warmest person, more so than anyone. Lord Arcos thanks Javier for the kind word, but he cannot say that he is a good lord just because of that. He explained that a leader should have firm principles and be willing to take action, like Lloyd right now. But in Javier's mind, Lloyd's only principle is money, but he shouldn't say that. Lord Arcos then commands Javier that his mission is no longer to monitor Lloyd. From now on, Lord Arcos asks him to protect Lloyd, the heir of Frontera. Even though Javier will follow his lord commands, he inwardly thinking that Lloyd has miraculously managed to revive his lord's fortunes, but he could never end up liking him. Back in his younger days, Lord Arcos asks Javier with what he wants to be when he grows up. Javier wants to become a knight and protect his lord. Lord Arcos says that he managed to survive that harsh winter all alone, so he is sure that Javier will become the world's strongest knight. And then the Baron gave him a wooden sword that he had carved out himself, and because of that, he gets bullied by Lloyd. He says if an orphan like Javier can become a knight, he tells Javier to keep dreaming and try again in his next life and breaking the wooden sword. Right now, Javier is still keeping the broken wooden sword in his room, thinking that he could never ended up liking him. As the night falls, Javier comes to Lloyd to help him sleep. He thoughts that Javier is so sure that he should hate Lloyd. But the wild ant incident, his success with the orc tribe and how he works hard like he has become a completely different person. Now, he hates himself for thinking that Lloyd is a decent person as he fell asleep. A little later when they both sleeping, the Lacona Knights comes up to them intending to assassinate Lloyd. With all his might he strikes his sword into Lloyd's heart, where suddenly Javier wakes up, dashes from his chair, and defends his lord. In the end, Javier is able to apprehend the knight and the night continues as usual. On the next day, Lloyd immediately resumes to work, reminding the workers that the most important thing is safety first. Javier reports to him that he handed the knight over to Viscount Lacona. He tries to explain his motive but Lloyd already knows because the Viscount has been paying a lot for the water. The Viscount probably fire his knight first. Knowing that, Javier asks why Lloyd doesn't take any precautions, while he knows that Lloyd always thinks everything in advance and always has planned for everything. Which Lloyd says that he has Javier as his knight, and no other precautions he needs to prepare other than that. Lloyd commends Javier that it's thanks to Javier he is able to move around freely. He adds that Javier is so capable so he trusts Javier, which makes Javier shock for a moment and Lloyd says that it is awkward, and tells Javier to say something as the conversation is so cringe. That makes Javier look away and clicked his tongue, while inwardly he hates himself for thinking that Lloyd is a decent man. Then Lloyd teases him that it is more like it, the reaction that he likes. A notification appears, saying that Javier Esrahan is finally letting go of his long-term resentment toward Lloyd. It gives him 15 approval points and for the first time, Javier's approval rating is positive, improving their relationship in a major way. As Lloyd exclaims that they will finish building the waterworks by tomorrow, and prepares to go to Cremo and earn the big bucks. The next day finally came. The party rides toward Cremo and Lloyd rides behind Javier on horse's back. Lloyd is sleeping on Javier's back annoying Javier so much, so he deliberately hits him to wake him up. Lloyd asks him whether he just hit him, but he says he didn't. Lloyd asks him whether he is sure or not because to Lloyd it sure felt like it. Yet, Javier asks whether Lloyd sees him do it, which is exactly the petty argument that Lloyd usually uses. The journey to Cremo was definitely not a short one, as they are in the middle of winter, but their pettiness continues the whole way, which is funny in itself. For the full experience of how funny the series is, you guys should read it on your own. Arriving at Cremo, the Lord welcomes them and introducing himself. When Lloyd tries to greet the Count, he gets stopped by Lord Cremo saying what Lloyd is completely different from what he had imagined. He heard the rumor that Lloyd is a talented builder and assumes that Lloyd looks rough, but to see Lloyd has such a noble appearance is surprising to him. Lord Cremo then goes to Javier, saying that he is the noblest of all noble and tried to betroth him with his daughter. And Lloyd tries to say something, which makes Lord Cremo angry, saying how insolent. A mere servant interrupts a conversation between nobles. When the dust settled, Lord Cremo apologizes to had caused a great offense against Lloyd, asking him not to be offended, adding that it is Lloyd's fault that he born with a servant's face. Yet, the matter itself is breaking Lloyd from inside. Lloyd can only inwardly wishing that Lord Cremo would stop. It is explained that Lord of Cremo, the city of commerce, Count Cremo, is also quite an important figure in the Night of Blood and Iron. In the novel, Javier becomes a wanted criminal after beheading the money lenders, Shiloh and Meatloaf. Javier goes into hiding and is eventually arrested by the Count in Cremo. But the Count can see Javier's character and integrity from just a few words with him, and ends up providing support to him in many ways. Back to the present world, Cremo explained that he wants to buy the jewels to decorate the statue that he was going to put in the sea. He adds further that a few years ago, a Giga Titan started to appear just off the coast from the port. They have never suffered any direct damages, but its mere existence is a source of fear. Lloyd tries to recall the story in the novel, which he does know something about it. Cremo had no other way of attacking it in the water, so even the Navy couldn't do anything. Cremo continued to decline and the Count faced a crisis. Lloyd thought that Javier would do something to help, but after the whole load of bait, it just ended. The novel didn't even make it clear whether there will be a season 2 or not. The first time Lloyd comes into this world, he thought that he would know everything in the book, yet there are parts that weren't fully explained and the novel is still playing out. Cremo claims that he done a lot of research to drive the Titan out. In doing so, he discovered something important. Mermaids, the strongest warrior who rule over the seas, are the object of fear for the Giga Titan. So, Cremo thinks that the Giga Titan is terrified of anything that even resembles mermaids, so he wants to build a statue of a mermaid in the sea. But in the end, he gave up, because if he raises the seabed to build a statue, then the depth will not be enough for the boats. Cremo promises to honor his words to buy the jewels, but as a modern civil engineer, Lloyd suggests that Cremo shouldn't just take a loss. He even will increase the price of the jewels as he will also build the statue for Cremo, without disturbing the water level in the channels. Lloyd thoughts of a friction pile and box caissons, and if he combines the two, then it's more than possible to build. In the end, Lloyd then tries to survey the ground zero with Javier to escort him. You look at the seabed, as fortunately the seabed is pretty flat, a thick sedimentary layer, so it's the right amount of soft. As Lloyd tries to look deeper to see the bedrock, he cannot withstand the cold water in his face. He resurfaces while Javier looks so happy that Lloyd is suffering. Javier then apologized that it's the first time looking at someone suffer has made him so happy. Lloyd is mad and tells him to take the measurement instead, while Javier tries to change the subject, asking about the development of the contracts with Cremo. Yet, Javier thoughts about it every time, but he still can't imagine it, to build up the ground vertically up from the seabed, unless Lloyd is going to use magic. Lloyd then says that he can really call it magic, the magic of cement. For now, the question is, how does Lloyd create cement in this world? But if it's Roman-style cement, Lloyd should definitely be able to do it. Going back to the port, Javier reminds Lloyd to not watch his step and fall, as Lloyd tells him that his banter is reaching a sword master's level, asking him whether he is a banter master. Suddenly, there is a cute girl looking for Lloyd with a letter in hand. She looks like a noble, with a blonde hair, saying that she has something she wants to give to Lloyd, which makes Lloyd flustered and bright. She introduces herself. Her name is Christine. She is Count Cremo's daughter, claiming that she saw Lloyd walking through the mansion courtyard yesterday. Christine cutely addresses him as Master Lloyd, calling out to him, which makes his heart beating so fast. She hurriedly handing out a love letter to him, asking him to accept it, but she handed it to Javier instead of Lloyd. Like daughter and her dad, they both thought the wrong person. Javier takes the letter while Lloyd thoughts that well, He was sort of expecting that, and it's fine because that's how that happened anyway. Javier looks at him and put the letter in his robe, while Christine ran away with her escort feeling so happy that he accepted the letter. Javier tries to be savages and pretends like nothing was happening, but Lloyd holds him off, calling him asshole and all kind of animals. It really annoys Lloyd when Javier acts like nothing just happened, that Javier took the love letter and put it away like it was nothing. It confuses him, but then he realizes it, assuming that Lloyd had never received a love letter before, as Lloyd just petrified in place and doesn't have nothing to refute with. With nothing to say, Javier encourages Lloyd to have strength, while the system also confirms it, saying that Javier sincerely wishes Lloyd the best, which makes Lloyd cries inside, thinking that he is so done with it. He is so furious, claiming that he wasn't jealous, not even a little bit, because he thought that he is going to be filthy rich making the plan for the statue and make so much money from it. Lord Cremo calls out to him, but he still have the filthy face from the incident, surprising Cremo. In an instant, Lloyd transformed to be customers friendly, saying that he was so focused on work and apologizes. Cremo informed him that he was able to gather most of the material that Lloyd requested without much difficulty. But it's not easy to get the volcanic ash and Cremo fails to find it. It's still not impossible to find it, as Cremo explained that they need to go to a volcano. At best he thought it would take half a year. The problem is Cremo can't wait that long, and Lloyd assures him to not worry about it, adding that he will find another way. Now, Lloyd needs to give up on Roman cement and tries to make Portland cement. He roughly knows how to make it, but not the details, but he thinks that if he hasn't got the brains, then he has to use the brawn. He decides to keep experimenting with all the different combinations. Days went by. Lloyd has failed on his 129 samples, but he knows that he is close and only need to get the mixing ratio right. As Lloyd so immersed in his trial and wanting to try a few more combinations, his summons, Podong, Bangle, and Hamang is worry about him. In the end, the three of them annoy him, asking him to take them to walk around the town. As he got so annoyed and yelled at them, he remembers his late pet that accompanied him in his previous life. Lloyd cries so hard in his dog funeral, as the dog was his last member of his family. He regrets it so much that he wants to brush its fur one more time, or should have played with it more. So, Lloyd ended up hugging the three of them, putting his work off for a moment as they are so much more important than his research. Taking them to walk around the town, Lloyd thoughts how awful he is, has everything going so well, so he has only been ordering them around like they are machines. Now he knows that he is the biggest moron in the world. He would have so many regrets if that happened again. Lloyd kneel in front of them, thanking them. Because of them he is where he is now. Then, the fantastical creatures are acknowledging Lloyd's sincere feeling. They consider him a part of their family, and their master and servant relationship changes into a member of the gang. He receives a bonus RP point from it and also a new upgrade for the fantastical creature he chooses. Podong and Hamang suggest that Lloyd should upgrade Bangle's skill. So he did. He thought that no matter what the skill is, he is sure he can find a use for it. And besides, it's what they want anyway. So, Bangle received the upgrade bonus skill. What she got is a new skill called Volcanic Blast. Lloyd is ecstatic knowing that, and Bangle is also so happy that happens. At this point, the system looks like is rigged to help Lloyd in any way. The next day, there's a sudden explosion in the volcano, surprising the whole town of Cremo. It turns out that Bangle is farting a whole lot of volcanic ash. However, Lloyd is so excited to finally has the final piece of the puzzle. He expresses how that is an absolute gift, calling out to Javier. But, as he forgot to tell Javier to cover his ears, he is now temporarily gone deaf. And so Lloyd shouts at him, saying that he is ugly, but Javier returned the mockery, saying that he is not as ugly as Lloyd. Now, thanks to Bangle, they quickly solve their cement problem. And the key to construction is speed, and Lloyd begin the project. First, build and install a giant diaper to filter the volcanic ash. There are 5 layers of mesh at the end of the diaper to catch the ash. Then, as they activate Bangle's volcanic blast, the volcanic ash is trapped in the diaper. Looking at Lloyd, Cremo now is able to see that Lloyd is not an ordinary engineer. He has never heard of those techniques, let alone the summoning creatures too, and he feels the need to keep a close eye on Lloyd. Looking at how Lloyd working on the project, Cremo will also give a detailed report to the king. Because if the rumors are true, then it's a waste to just keep him in the backwoods. Now, once the ingredients for cement have been gathered, the second stage is to make a caisson to pour the cement into. After that, they put it in the sea and use Hamang to remove all the water from the caisson. Stage 3 is to abuse Javier's power again. Lloyd makes him fill the bottom of the caisson with friction posts and hammers it. As they wait for the next post, Lloyd smiles at him and teases him. wondering why this time Javier didn't complain, saying stuff like he is a knight and he shouldn't do that. So, Javier tries to leave the sights while Lloyd ridicules him, saying the same thing over and over again. In the end, Lloyd says that if Javier doesn't hammer the posts in, then he wouldn't earn any money and they can't clear their debts, adding that if Lloyd faints from the stress, then the Baron will be sad. If he end up bedridden, then the Baroness might also fall ill. The last punch is that Lloyd begging Javier to protect the Frontera family, asking him to help again. In the end, left with no choice, Javier ended up hitting the posts again. Once Lloyd finished his regular coaching sessions with Javier, he uses Bangle's steel dung launcher to build steel frame. Finally, after it finishes, he pours the long-awaited cement into it, and dismantle the caisson once the cement has hardened. Then the artificial sea platform is complete. Lloyd explained to Lord Cremo that the platform is 50 centimeters higher than the water level at high tide. If Cremo puts Mermaid's statue there, it will look like it's floating. Now, to be honest, Cremo can't believe that the foundation can withstand that weight of the statue. But if Lloyd succeeds, Cremo promises to make sure that he won't be disappointed with the construction fees. In the end, they manage to erect a massive mermaid statue in the platform, then hold a party gala around it. Meanwhile, Lloyd is feeling uncomfortable wearing the formal outfit, and Lord Cremo introduces Lloyd as the man who helps to make the statue a reality, and commends him for doing a great job. But they went to Javier, saying all kind of praise, how he is so full of poise, a perfect face and are talented, leaving Lloyd out. Lloyd thought how he is smarter than most, he knew they would all flock over there. He claims that definitely he is not jealous, as he prefers fast money transfers to compliments. But looking at Javier, the look that really annoys Lloyd, telling him to get lost and to stop pitying him. Lord Cremo laughs, blaming Lloyd's face, and he reintroduces Lloyd again as the man who made the sea platform, telling them that Javier is his servant. And the party continues with chatter of the nobles and all, while from underneath the sea level, Giga Titan emerges. It looks at the mermaid statue, thinking that it is their natural enemy. As there is only one mermaid, the Titan decides to kill it. It turns out that Javier notices that something is coming to their way. He doesn't know exactly, but he knows that it is extraordinarily swift and about as big as Hamming at its biggest. Now Lloyd knows that they are in trouble, and the Titan swiftly swimming towards the statue. So, Lloyd suggests Cremo that he suspects the Titan is approaching, and he must let the passengers know and evacuate everyone. So Cremo calls out to his knight named Genevieve, asking him whether he detect anything strange far out in the sea, which Genevieve claims that he doesn't. Cremo then explains that Genevieve has pretty much reached sword master status. His senses are extremely sharp, so Cremo doesn't want to evacuate the people. Cremo assures Lloyd that in a few years, the Titan has never come that close to the city. There's no reason why it would suddenly attack. Lloyd then explains that there might be a reason now. Finally, Lord Cremo believes what Lloyd says, so he commands to raise anchors and to get away from the statue. As it is taking too long, Lloyd tells Javier to take care of the anchors, and he throws Podong out in the sea while feeding him the red seed. Deep in the seabed, Javier uses Mana Blast to cut the chain of the anchor off, and Podong release the line that connected to the ship. Finishes cutting the chain off, Javier is now able to see the Titan that comes to the statue. He notices that it's sped up going to strike them. As the Titan comes out, it wreaks havoc around the statue. As the ship's balance breaks off, Lloyd also gets thrown out from the ship. When the Titan strikes the statue, Podong slip out of the way and ran to safety. Fortunately, using the Mana Blast, Javier able to shoot himself up catching Lloyd. Still, the people at the town wasn't that lucky as the broken statue comes to their way. The broken smaller part already makes such a horror, bouncing around and breaking stuff up on their way. Not to mention the biggest body part of the statue, where it landed on the castle. The people on the sea is drowning, but as both of Lloyd and Javier can't save all of them, he tells Hamming to suck the water, and the people along with it. While the Titan continues to smash its way into the town, Javier tells Lloyd that the Titan is moving to the city and tells him that they must stop it. Yet, Lloyd is running into another way, and makes Javier asks where Lloyd is going while the Titan is on another way. That's when Lloyd shouts at him, saying that is why they have to run that way, asking whether Javier is wanting to fight the monster and lost all of his bananas, which shocks and disappoints Javier with Lloyd's takes on it. Javier asks again whether Lloyd is just going to ignore all of those people who are in danger, which Lloyd shouts that they come there to make money. They didn't come there to fight some sea monster and keep the peace, as the city has an army and an artillery. He explained that they got it, and they will be fine on their own. Javier is shocked to know that, as in his mind now, Lloyd Frontera that in moments of crisis has showed him great ingenuity. Javier saw a resolve to not give up, and as Lloyd didn't turn his back on those who were struggling. But now, he is screaming, telling Javier that they are busy with their own stuff, asking why do they have to protect someone else's city, and the rational thing to do is running away. In the end, that's what Lloyd truly are, disappoints Javier and reduces his approval point on Lloyd. Therefore, Javier could never do that and Lloyd screams at him, telling him to stop being righteous all the time, adding if Javier goes there, he will die. But Javier ignores him, using his sword and mana blast. He starts riding the wave going into the town. Meanwhile at the town, Giga Titan is wreaking havoc and the town defense system is helpless in the face of the Titan. It even has its own unique attack decimating the tower in an instant. The only thing he looked for other than that is the statue of the mermaid, where it has its own way of thinking. Instinctively thoughts that the mermaid is alive and it must kill the mermaid. Arriving at the town, Javier immediately tries to attack it. With Mana Blast, his ultimate attack, he directs it toward the Titan's hand which about to stomp a person. Javier manages to save the person, but as it seems that his attack is gnaw in the face of the Titan, the attack bounces off from the hard shell that it has. Now, the Titan has Javier in its sight, attacking him with the massive claw it has. Fortunately, Javier is so nimble and able to dodge it. But, using its special attack, Giga Titan attacks Javier with a single attack where Javier fails to defend against it. He gets seriously injured. What he thinks about is that he needs to tie the Titan up for a bit so the people can evacuate, so he refuses to die until the people are safe. At the freezing cold sea, Lloyd thoughts that he is not some overpowered character or something. Even if he has so many RP points and skills, it's all only construction related. So, there is nothing he could do in the face of Giga Titan. But, like a sudden realization, if he runs away like that, the city will be destroyed, and if he leaves it to be destroyed, he wouldn't get paid. So with the newly found determination, he shouts out that he will head back and will claim the payment on time. Well, that's the only thing he needs to realize to save the people. The extremely petty Lloyd goes back to the town to slay the Titan. Meanwhile, Javier is still fighting the Titan. He dodges his attack and keeps trying to find its weak spot. With a Mana Blast, he tries to attack its eyes thinking that it's the weak point of the massive lobster. But he fails anyway, and his attack gets bounce off again, making him vulnerable to a counter-attack. So the Titan attacks Javier while he is mid-air, where he unable to dodge. But suddenly, Hammond smash it in the face, making it misses its attack. Lloyd arrive, so pissed at Giga Titan that it dares to mess with his cash flow from afar. Having an opening, Javier tries to attack it again on top of its head, yet Javier still fails to penetrate its thick shell. Right now, Javier is still failing to land his attacks on the Titan properly. He thoughts that he couldn't win, yet he feels so calm. It turns out that it's because Lloyd has come back. Javier thoughts that means Lloyd has a way to beat the Titan. Before Lloyd joins the battle, he rides Podong around to survey the shell of the lobster. He notices when Javier attacks it, the energy of the shock migrate to a single spot, which is its horn. And he also finds the spot where the Titans store the water sac for its hydraulic claw, and if he able to strike in that area, they can destroy the lobster. Javier shouts from below, asking Lloyd what to do, where Lloyd poses a weird gesture trying to tell Javier to strike its horn. But Javier has no idea what that means, thinking that Lloyd has lost all control of himself. In the end, Lloyd yells back at Javier to cut its horn, where he instantly jumps on top of the Titan. He doubts that even if he cut off its horn, it still won't be fatal, yet he decides to trust Lloyd anyway, as Lloyd would never say anything he couldn't stand behind. And he shouts at him, telling him even though the horn would be hollow, it still won't be easy to cut, adding that Mana Circle aren't all about hitting it hard. Even though it won't be easy, Javier jumps up to its horn, giving up on his defense. He uses all of his power to strike the horn. He figures it out and uses a high-frequency mana like a chainsaw. Now, the Titan has its eyes on him, so Lloyd commands Podong to help with Javier's defense. Podong blocks the lobster's attack and letting Javier to cleanly break open its horn. The lobster screams as its horn is decapitated. As the horn falls down, it makes an earthquake in the city. Lloyd shouts, telling Javier to get the area right between where its middle legs meet, from its tail toward its head at an angle. He explained that if Javier get in a Mana Blast from that direction, their construction payments won't be delayed. So Javier gets into the position. Looking at how gigantic the Titan is, he prepares to strike a Mana Blast towards it. But the lobster crashes on top of him, while Lloyd can only watch in shock the lobster is falling on top of his knight. Javier thoughts that if he is going to die, He will take the lobster with him and strike his mana blast. Fortunately, Podong runs to him and grabs him out of the way. Lloyd cheers up as Podong able to save Javier from the crash. Then, Podong scolds him for his reckless behavior, so Javier promises that he will try to stay alive until he is able to defeat the Titan, as he will trust his master, Lloyd, with the plan. So he cooks up a plan, thinking that the lobster is faster than he thought, so he need to lure it somewhere to prevent more damage to the city. Lloyd calls out to Podong, rides him up and telling him to run to the place he point at. He then saying that the lobster sees Javier as its biggest threat right now, and tells Javier to lure it along the east coast and into the woods. Now, Lloyd and his party have brought enough time, assuming that the Count is already finished with his preparation. 15 minutes earlier, the Count can't believe that something like that would happen. His knight is powerless in front of the Titan, and the fault is on the Count as he believed that the statue could drive it out. Then Lloyd comes up to him, saying that he has a plan with the statue. He asks the Count to patch it up and bring it to him at the woods. So, Javier lures it, evading the massive lobster's attack with his nimble legs. It wasn't easy though, as Javier already reaches his limit, not to mention the injury that he receives before. But he musters his strength as the mission from his lord is to lure the Titan out of the city, and with his morale compass to save the people, he starts running again. With every step Javier takes, the heavier his breaths become. He gasps for air as the Titan hysterically chases him to the world's end. As his running becomes sloppy, with no way to take covers, Lloyd comes with his war cry telling them to give it all out. With cheeky grins on his face, he drive Podong with the bronze statue in tow, saying that he bring the real enemy of the lobster. Looking at the statue, the Giga Titan screams and his obsession to the statue is rampaging. Lloyd is happy to see that reaction, thanks to the Count that he manages to put the statue together. With that, Lloyd tries to make an opening for Javier to strike his mana blast to the lobster. Well, Javier still manages to nags that Lloyd doesn't explain anything to him and makes him run like a lunatic as they pass each other. Facing off with the lobster, Podong immediately turns around and starts frantically running away, getting its attention. Then Javier also turns around, leaping right below the Titan, strikes his mana blast into the gap between its shells. The attack looks like a massive explosion, leaving the lobster stand still for a moment in its place. As Javier falls down, he is disappointed with himself that he only manages to create a small hole in the Titan's outer shell, because Javier used his mana blast too many times and loses his strength. That makes him think that it's just an excuse, and he feels that he is still too weak and not strong enough to protect the people. But Lloyd praises him from below, saying that he done a great job, and Lloyd asks him to leave the rest to Lloyd. So Javier lets it go and starts losing his consciousness, knowing that Lloyd said that so confidently, making him feels at ease, and Hamming catch him with his soft body. Lloyd shouts at him, telling to rest, and claims that he will protect the city no matter what. That was what he shouted to Javier as he dashes towards the beast. But the truth is, Lloyd thinks it is impossible for him to deal with the Titan. He thinks that he can lure the lobster far away and leave it there. But there's no guarantee that the beast won't come back, as the water near Cremo is the Giga Titan's habitat after all. On top of that, the lobster is pretty smart and it might go berserk and take revenge on the city for summoning the mermaid statue. As Podong reaching his limit, Lloyd tells him to throws him up. He shoots up to the hole, thinking what can he pull of now and what can he do to deal with the lobster. Earlier, he has decided to save the city and ensure a swift return on his investment. He has a couple of plans that involved him attacks it, which is a mana blast. He has to perform that ultimate attack towards the lobster with his shovel. But to use mana blast attack, Lloyd needs a triple mana heart, while right now he is only have a double circle. So Lloyd decides to frantically upgrading his Asrahan core technique with all of his RP points. But as he reaches the last level before the third mana heart, his point is depleted with lacking only 60 points. With that, simply there is nothing Lloyd can do in the battle with the Giga Titan, so he needs to stay out of the battle. That was his rational decision at that time, but Lloyd still ends up dangling from the lobster. Every means seem no. Javier is unconscious while Lloyd unable to scratch the lobster with his current strength. But with the little conscious Javier has, his approval rating raises again for Lloyd and gives Lloyd the point that he needs to upgrade his Asrahan core technique. So he doesn't wait for it, his third circle emerges, circling around his heart. With that, he shouts, claiming that the lobster is now his dinner, and starts performing the mana blast attack. One circle to protect the heart while the other two circles collide to make an explosion as the lobster stamps on the stone mountain. That makes gravel flew around, and one of them manages to smack Lloyd in the face, making him lost his concentration. Being hit with the stone, Lloyd lost his train of thoughts that makes him confuse letting the one circle that protects his heart join the other two. So with all of his mana circle, he performs his mana blast without his heart being protected. He shoots up to the hole of the shell, making a massive explosion in the Giga Titan's body, breaking it from inside. Even the aftermath can be seen from the city as the lobster lay flat on the ground, dead. A few moments later, the trio summons wakes Javier up by circling around him. When he wakes up, he wasn't even surprised to see the lobster's corpse. Instead, he wonders how Lloyd able to do it. Podong then says something to him. Even though Javier doesn't understand what Podong is saying, he is able to know that Podong wants him to follow them. They run with saddened look on their face as they discover Lloyd's lifeless body. Javier is surprised to see Lloyd's empty eyes, trying to call out to him. Upon checking Lloyd's heart, Javier finds that his heart has stopped beating. At the Frontera County, a messenger pigeon arrives at the Baron's study. The Baron receives a letter from Count Cremo about the incident. The panicked look emerges as he reads the letter, so he frantically rides his horse. Without even preparing himself to anything, he rides towards Cremo, crying out that he has told Lloyd so many times to not get himself into dangerous situation. Baron's knights and the Baroness followed behind Lord Arcus as they try to remind him that they couldn't depart without any preparation. But the Baron insisting on depart immediately, so the ride towards Cremo, and the letter from the Count reads as follows. To the dearest Baron Frontera, his eldest son, Lloyd Frontera, has admirably completed all the construction works that they need in Cremo. However, immediately afterwards, Cremo faced a grave peril, during which Lloyd Frontera and his guard Javier Srahun saved many lives through their acts of sacrifice and valor. Then Lloyd proceeded to fall into a bizarre unconscious state. Count sending the correspondence as he felt it was his duty to inform the Baron of the situation at once. He is looking forward to see the parents of such a great young man soon. In Lord Arcus's eyes, Lloyd has changed for the better, how Lloyd respectfully greeted him, how Lloyd becomes extremely hardworking, and how Lloyd's demeanor changes. That makes Lord Arcus question whether Lloyd is really his son. The party then come across a monster that looked like a wolf, with sharp fang and claw, an extremely ferocious monster. Since they chosen the shortcut, they expected to face a monster along the way. A swift and nimble monster who can run faster than their horses, so Sir Bayard decides to get off from his horse as he will buy some time and telling his lord to go ahead. Then, Lord Arcus decides to go and leave Sir Bayard to fight the monster. With its sharp claw, their attacks collide, making a clanging sound like a banging metal. His sword doesn't survive though, it breaks in two, marking how strong the monster's claw is. With its speed, the wolf bites Bayern on his shoulder and holding him off. But he doesn't simply give up. He takes up his knife and stabs the monster's head, which doesn't do much as it tightens his jaw in his shoulder. Suddenly, Lord Arcus comes behind it and slashes the monster. Marbella also helps, stabbing the wolf on its head. The combined power of the trio manages to kill it. When Lord Arcus tries to help Bayern up, he speaks how ashamed he is that he is a guard, yet he fails to protect them. Lord Arcus comforts Sir Bayern that it is his duty to protect his subject. But, as he looks around trying to call his wife, not one but a pack of the wolf approach them. Now they can only wait for their untimely end, meeting the pack of vicious beasts. In his last-ditch efforts, Sir Bayern takes up his sword, trying to fight the pack with what he has left. Suddenly, Javier appears. He lands behind the monsters readily to unsheath his sword. In a flash, he beheaded them one by one, and he reports to the Baron, saying that he came to escort them, just in case, wishing that they are not injured. That makes Sir Bayern surprised, as he knew that Javier's swordsmanship and mana abilities are far beyond him. But he knew that it was not at that level prior to his leaving for Cremo, wondering how Javier could have improved that much. After that, the Baroness asks him whether Lloyd is okay. With saddened looks, Javier confesses that he doesn't know. He cannot tell whether Lloyd is alive or not. Back to the night when the Giga Titan fell and Javier learned that Lloyd's heart is not beating. He is so shocked with the thoughts whether Lloyd is really leaving him and their estate. He cries out, thinking that his newly found home will become ruins with Lloyd's death. But, as Javier grabs Lloyd's hand, he notices a faint pulse in Lloyd's heart. He knows that Lloyd's heart is definitely stopped earlier when he checked. So Javier put his hand again to check it. He notices the triple mana circles surrounding Lloyd's heart are spinning around at an unbelievable speed. He can't judge the condition of the heart, because he can't see with the circle spinning around. But he concludes that the rotation is what keeping Lloyd alive. Now, he understands how Lloyd slayed the Titan, thinking how wonderful Lloyd is, where Lloyd put everything on the line to save the people. At the city of Cremo, the people can be seen rebuilding the ruin that the Titan caused. Javier arrives at the city with the Baron's party. He explained that his young master, Lloyd, is at the Count's manor. A doctor is tending to him, but his condition has not improved. Lord Arcus expresses how terrible that was. He thinks that just Lloyd and Javier fighting alone against the Giga Titan. But Javier expresses how is it not. He reveals that it was Lloyd's strength that vanquished the monster. That makes Lloyd's parents stunned with what Lloyd has achieved. Suddenly there are two townspeople coming up to them, asking whether they are going to the Count's manor. They explain even though they can't do anything, they at least will come there for him. One of them says that if not for Lloyd, he would have frozen to death. He explained that even when Lloyd was rushing towards the Giga Titan, he saved so many people along the way. Another person reveals, if not for Lloyd, he would be doomed to die buried beneath the rubble of his house. He reveals that Lloyd tells Bangle to eat all of the rubble to save the townspeople. A woman expresses that a giant hippopotamus appears and spewed out water to extinguish the fire. Right now, it all reveals to Lloyd's parents' eyes that the townspeople gather in front of the Count's manor to pray for Lloyd. Lloyd becomes a savior to a lot of people that face the calamity in form of a giant lobster. They were all praying for Lloyd to wake up, where suddenly appears a pot stir as he shouts that it's all ultimately Lloyd's fault when he built the mermaid statue. The townspeople whisper around for a moment, only to band together beating him up. A flash in Lloyd's heart indicates that he is still alive. His courage and sacrifice have deeply moved the people of Cremo. He then receives an enormous reward for that achievement from the system. That's when Lloyd opens his eyes. He had a severe headache as he remembers that he used the triple core mana blast like a fool. In front of him is the notification, asking why he is not dead and his heart should have exploded. She then tells him that he will find that out soon enough as Javier comes into the room. He is surprised to see Lloyd is awake, and the first thing Lloyd says is a sarcastic line, cynically telling how Javier is the only man he wants to see. Lloyd asks about when the Count would pay for the construction. A smile appears on Javier's face, saying how good it is that Lloyd seems to be alright in the head. The Baron and Baroness come inside. They run toward Lloyd, then they squeeze him as they hug him tight. And Lord Arcus thinks that whether Lloyd is really his son is not important right now. Instead, he is thankful that Lloyd is alright. Meanwhile, at the royal capital, Magenta, the Empress receives the Count's Cremo's report. It is explained to her that Lloyd manages to completely destroy the Giga Titan. The Empress Alicia, as she wants to judge Lloyd herself, she commands her subject to send a letter to the Frontera barony for Lloyd and Javier to come to the royal capital to appear in front of her. The stories of Lloyd's great courage, wisdom, and self-sacrifice are spreading all over the land. It was what the system shows, but Lloyd is completely uninterested. But when the rewards appear, he is excited to learn that he received 1500 RP points and now he can store high concentrations of mana in his heart. That explain why Lloyd has so much energy stored in his heart despite being in a coma for a month. He now has become an owner of a mana heart, which means shoveling will be easier for him now. His mana heart was born, not as regular training, but from the impact of the mana blast. As such, his mana heart has been given unique capabilities, shock neutralizer, that enables him to use mana blast without restriction, which means the work in the quarry can be done faster. The mana heart needs to be protected from the impact of the mana blast because it acts like an ammunition dump. So, using mana blast is like setting off an explosion next to one of those power kegs, which blows up the whole kegs. It literally a death traps if Lloyd doesn't protect it. But in that moment, he didn't have a mana heart, that's why he didn't die. The shock from the blast instead filled his heart, and as it was working to keep him alive, it condensed and turned into a mana heart. He is now thankful that he neglected his mana heart training, thinking that it pays to be lazy sometimes. After that, Count Cremo arrives, coming into the carriage, and tells Lloyd that they are going to depart right away. Now, it comes again, the eyes of Lloyd's that is scheming something. As they depart passing through Cremo's road, Lloyd expresses how he is wondering the price of the building and the road in Cremo to repair. Cremo says that it's hard to tell, but he imagines it's well over a month's worth of the city budget. Lloyd says if the Giga Titan hadn't been knocked down, he bet it would have another half a year's worth. Pressuring Cremo, asking what Lloyd trying to tell him, which Lloyd answer that it's nothing compared to half a year's budget. What he is getting for the construction project must be like small change, then cynically laughing. Lloyd adds, who would have known to think that the tragedy was the result of some statue made to drive the Giga Titan away. Regardless of whose plan it was, he can't say it was anyone's fault, it was Mother Nature's way. Either way, a few people did have to risk their lives, but everything worked out very well in the end. And cynically laughing again. Being pressured, Lord Cremo offers 1.5 times the construction fees to Lloyd, which Lloyd apologized to have caused a misunderstanding. adding that he finally understands that the Cremo citizens' lives are worth only 1.5 times his construction fees. Lord Cremo is silent, but he is shocked inside, so he increases it to twofold of the fees, which Lloyd ignores and silently judging him again, which makes the Count nervous, breaking a sweat. So he finally offers 3 times of it, making Lloyd laughs inside that he just win an astronomical amount of money. That makes the Count shudders because of Lloyd, and he just stick out his hand, saying that he is in awe of the Count's generosity, adding that he will consider that a special compensation and put to good use. So they shake hands. Lord Cremo feels strange. It is so strange for him as he feels like he just got extorted by Lloyd. Yet, he doesn't hate Lloyd. He just unable to bring himself to hate the man that extorted him. Then, they finally arrive in front of the Count's manor. The townspeople are cheering for him, which makes him nervous, thinking that he is just a nobody in Korea, and that is too much pressure for him. Lord Cremo explained that they have set up the podium for Lloyd with a crystal ball with amplification power, as the people clamoring to hear what Lloyd has to say. Lloyd thoughts of saying something like it is all of the townspeople who prevailed over the tragedy, they are all the real heroes. So he stands up on the podium, looks totally uninterested with what about to happen, and wonders on how many people they're going to hear him. The first sentence he says is, "Citizen of Cremo, have you ever heard of Ondal Flooring?" Yeah, he uses that opportunity to promote his estate business, saying that Ondal Flooring is able to help with the freezing temperature in the winter. The citizens is silent in confusion with what Lloyd is saying, but Lloyd doesn't stop there. He excitedly promoting it as if they have an Ondal house, it will be the best life they will ever have. Lastly, he informed them to visit the Baron's manor located in the Frontera barony for more information and left. Yeah, he just leave the podium like nothing had happened. Now Lord Cremo understand why he can't hate Lloyd. He is meticulous in seeking every penny of profit. Lloyd is persistent but reasonable, and he gets done what he needs to get done. Far from hating him, Lord Cremo wants Lloyd in his side, as a man of Lloyd's caliber stuck in some far-flung village is a loss to the kingdom. Back at the Frontera barony, Lloyd's soon-to-be Golden Goose, the Frontera estate, and its most senior knight, Sir Bayern. Lloyd thoughts of him associated with honesty, integrity, sincerity, and a good guy. But his skills as a knight are only average, and while Lloyd observes him more, he is slightly below than average. That's what Lloyd originally thought. It was a pity, that is until Sir Bayern reports the plan in place for the migration. The list of names, detailed on the land allocation on a stack of paper. Another stack of reports from a large-scale deal with the neighboring estate. An another one about the water insulation and repairs. So, Lloyd holds him off, asking whether he did all of that in the time when Lloyd was gone. So he explained that he is just doing what he was told, as Lloyd told him to take care of the rest while Lloyd is gone. Suddenly, there's a worker comes in, informing that the interior work on the last Ondal project is complete and awaiting Bayern's inspection. Arriving at the site, Sir Bayern inspects the work even when Lloyd is around. He evaluates that the work is good and have no flaw, making the workers happy. That surprised Lloyd with how capable Bayern is. He thought if Bayern was born in Korea, he would have been at least a managing director at a big corporation. It turns out that the large-scale flooring contract was all the work of the Baron and Baroness. Those two also had a gift for something other than being lord and lady of an estate, as the estate business is brimming with life, and they start building a storage facility for the coal. Lloyd has paid off more than half the debt with the construction money. On top of that, they are getting more than enough in water supply fees from their sucker of a neighbor. Thinking about it, Lloyd disgustingly grinning with the thoughts that his retirement fund and his merriment is closing. Javier thoughts how sometimes he can't stand it when Lloyd makes that kind of face, as he suddenly finds himself wanting to punch Lloyd. Suddenly, there's a horn blown, marking the sound announcing the arrival of the royal messenger. The red carpet then laid, with the messenger is so extravagant getting off from the horse. He opens the decree as the Baron's family kneel, while Lloyd is annoyed wanting the messenger to get to the point already, and he is getting an outrageously strong feeling that the decree means trouble.